Hello, Motorrad World fans, and welcome to this episode of Talking MotoGP with myself, Rob Portman, and my partner in crime, Paul Scott. Here to talk everything MotoGP from what was a very exciting round one at Qatar. It's finally MotoGP is back on track. We've been teased with some testing and an end, but you can never really take too much from that. Finally, we've had the first round, and Paul, we're going to get into it along with all of our fans that have already tuned in. We've got a lot of people saying hello and already get those questions and get those comments. I'll try and catch up with them. But Paul, what a way to kick off MotoGP 2024.
Yeah, Rob, we were so excited just watching the testing, and the testing gave us an idea. And I think pretty much for once, the testing sort of was true to form. Obviously, we'll look at one or two riders, but certainly what a great way to start the weekend. And how is them have that storm out of nowhere in the desert that, what were Michelin thinking? Do we need to ship in another container of wet weather tires? Because I know in previous years, they take very few wet tires to Qatar. Suddenly they've used their whole allocation in one session, and now what? So that I just wondered, but then our mate James Dent, who was there, he sent me a message on Sunday morning to say, no, the weather's perfect. After the rain, there's going to be no more issues with that. So, but it was just could have been a bit of a cat amongst the pigeons story, especially for Michelin.
Yeah, when I saw that, I rushed home because I missed the first practice session, and I rushed home, got the laptop out, going to watch this exciting FP2, and I just saw these guys just dawdling around, and I saw 205 lap times, and I was like, no man, what's going on here? And because you couldn't really see it was raining, it was just wet. So I'm glad it didn't. It was just a blip in what was otherwise a fantastic race weekend. To everyone joining in already, thank you so much for joining in, saying hello. Good evening to each and every one of you from wherever you are around the world. We have got plenty to chat about, so we're going to start right at the top, and let's talk. We'll dive pretty much through as the weekend went, but we'll start with a sprint race, and it was no surprise. Although we say it was no surprise, Martin, there was certainly some troubles leading up to this race weekend. We know the Qatar test, he was complaining about this chattering or this vibration that he couldn't get rid of. That seemed to kind of still be evident in this past weekend. Martin pretty much coming out and saying, and his team coming out and saying the bike's still not perfect. It was really the rider that won that race. And, he's become the sprint king. He's won 11 of the sprint races that have happened so far in the MotoGP category. I think Pecco's got 3, Brad's got 2, Alex has got 2. So he's definitely the sprint king, and able to just dig deep and pull it out for those 12 laps. And I think it's pretty much going to be the same theme as we saw last year, where, Martin's the man to beat on a Saturday. On a Sunday, yeah, he's going to be one of the men to beat, but it's a little bit more open on Sundays.
Yeah, definitely. So you can see also, and we've seen it in seasons past, his one-lap pace is fantastic. And obviously, he's quite happy that for sprint race distance, so like at Qatar now, 10 or 11 laps, he's quite happy to hang it at maximum for 20 minutes. Going to Sunday, I think he's equally as good at doing it for 40 minutes, but he knows now he's got to conserve the tire. So it's a different race altogether. And I don't believe he's quite got the capacity, whatever it is, whether it's mental, whether it's racing, whether it's not confident in the package, to deal with Sunday the way that Paco Bagnaia can. Because if you look at Friday, Pecco didn't look ruffled, but we know he didn't have his happy face on. But he didn't look ruffled, which we've seen it how many times last year, Rob? Friday, both sessions, almost nowhere, maybe mid-pack. Come Saturday, he steps it up, makes it into Q2, and then race day. I'm going to say this, and there are going to be people who are going to shout me down, but he's the new Sunday man. Brad always used to be good on a Sunday. When I say used to be, because he was qualifying in 15th and finishing 4th. Now he's qualifying 4th and finishing 2nd. That's fantastic. That's where he should be. He shouldn't have been qualifying as far back as he was, not last season, the year before. But Pecco on a Sunday, when you've kind of thought, well, he's struggling a little bit. Man alive. A little bit of aggression on the first lap, gets into the front and just controls the race. I won't say dominated. He certainly did, because no one got past him, but he controlled the race. If Brad closed 4 tenths, he opened 4 tenths. If Brad closed 2 tenths, he opened 2 tenths. So I'm going to say to Pecco, absolutely fantastic.
I think, in many ways, it's similar to the theme we saw last year. Martin hangs it all out in the sprint race. He goes all out. He wins up there. Pecco definitely takes a little bit more of a reserved approach to a sprint race because gathers data, but he knows the main prize is on Sunday. And we saw that again in Saturday's race, that Pecco, wasn't 100% happy with the bike, very much still using it as we've got to still, fix a couple of problems. Sunday is definitely the main prize. That's where all the points are, and it played out again. So what impressed me with Martin this time on Sunday was that I don't think it was by any means perfect. I don't think he had the perfect package. I think they were still suffering with some gremlins in chattering, and we heard a couple of Ducati riders now complaining about the chattering. We've never really heard of it before, until now, after the Qatar test, where Martin came out publicly and said, no, I've got this massive vibration, really struggling. Then all of a sudden this weekend, you put a mic in Marc Marquez or Alex Marquez's face, and they were all of a sudden asked about this chattering problem that Ducati's have. And, Alex said, yeah, it's been there the whole time. You just, it's a little bit more manageable, or it's not. So what impressed me with Martin is on the Sunday is previous Martin might have thrown his toys out the cot, or, pushed too far and crashed. He kind of just managed it. And when he crossed the line in third, I thought, what kind of response are we going to get here from Martin? Is he going to, kick it? And it's about looking at the tires, it's the bike's fault. And he was actually quite calm and collected and knew, on these bad days, or these tougher than normal days, it's all about picking up points. That's where he lost the championship last year, was on these tough days when the things aren't going according to plan. He last year threw it into the weeds or made mistakes and lost points. This race, and it's one thing doing it in one race, he's got to do it the whole season. But I looked there and went, you know what? If that Martin comes out more often on Sundays, we know he's going to win races. He's going to win main races. He's going to win a lot of sprint races. It's in those races that you can't win, how you manage yourself. And I saw a difference in Martin on Sunday.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's maturity. That's probably 3.5 months of wrapping his head around why he lost the championship last year. Because as much as Pecco did win it, I'm going to go 51% Martin lost the championship. He crashed, then he chose the wrong tire against better advice. And, so the pressure certainly was more in his face than it was in Pecco. Take nothing away from Pecco. He showed us time and again, he's not that exuberant Valentino Rossi personality. He's the guy who, when he puts his helmet on, he knows what his job is and he gets it done. So, yeah, he's fantastic. But going back to Martin, I do agree. I think over that 3.5 month period, he's matured. He's had time to reflect. And especially at a track like Qatar, which it was very abrasive on tires. He didn't look like he was taking any risks. He obviously, and they all said afterwards that they were all on the limit. He tried his best. He realized 16 points is better than nothing. So, it's the first race. We've said it in many championships throughout any form of motorsport. You can't win the championship in the first round, but you can certainly go a long way to losing it. So, yeah, I think he did the right thing. I think he was more reserved is probably one word you could use. But I definitely think over the last 3.5 months, whether he's been to a head doctor or just his team have sat him down and said to him, listen, let's deal with what happened and what do we do going forward to eliminate those problems. I think they've certainly dealt with that. The chatter, as you say, he didn't have a wobbler. He's mentioned it. He's not saying the bike's no good. He's just saying we have this problem. And they'll sort it out at some point, And as you say, he's going to win sprint races, no doubt. And he's definitely going to win a couple of main races. He's that guy. He's that fast. And someone on Facebook or somewhere said, we've already seen who the top 5 are and nothing's going to change. It's going to be very difficult to argue against that point after one round in the championship.
I agree with you. There was a big statement from a lot of riders there, and I know you say you can't take too much from the first race, but there was a lot kind of said at that first race that you can take from, and a lot of people agreeing with the sentiments here about Jorge Martin, Mariska Hutchinson, Oli Moto, both kind of saying he just looks more mature. He knows now that you're not going to, especially first race of the season, you're not going to win the championship. It's about understanding. It's about gathering the points, getting the data. So, yeah, more of a Sunday man is Jorge Martin now. And I definitely think, like you said, team have got to him and said, listen, last year we'll give you that kind of blip. We made mistakes. We should have being a bit more firm with you in terms of tire choice and. So I think that whole team environment has kind of matured, and that's helped their rider mature. So Martin, finishing on him, fantastic. He's spectacular to watch. How the guy goes out like in a practice session, and after 3 laps just already sets to. He's just so confident in himself, and it's good to see. And that's what he didn't balance that well last year, I felt, was that arrogance. They all need arrogance. You need arrogance to be a top sportsman. But he sometimes let that get in the way. And like Mariska said, or Olimoto said, sorry, before, if he saw Pecco going, he would, do something stupid or push him. He would find some way to cling on to Pecco. This time, he almost accepted that, okay, Pecco's got the pace. And he even said in his interview afterwards, Pecco just had the pace. You go. There's going to be times where roles are going to be reversed and he's going to have to make the decision. So very, very impressed with Martin. I must say, I really enjoyed Martin, everything from his debrief to everything that was said and done over the race weekend. I was impressed with Martin. Let's get on to our superstar, Mr. Brad Binder, who, from testing up until now, throughout the whole race weekend, he's got, and a lot of people are commenting about it in the comment section. He's got this look in his eye that we all riders always talk about. We want to win the championship, but deep in those eyes, you can see we're not there yet, or there's a bit of doubt. And Brad's had it with the KTM. We're going to go for the championship this year. And the mouth saying it, the eyes are not saying it. This year, I see this Brad Binder talking a game. Big statements like we've closed the gap to Ducati. They're not as far ahead of us anymore. We've made giant leaps. But you got to back up that talking with results. And he did it this first race. Yes, still a little bit off, but we cannot forget, and we'll talk about Yamaha and Honda later. Every time KTM closes that gap, Ducati just do this. Ducati are just moving the goalposts, which is just destroying the Hondas and the Yamahas. But KTM are the only ones that are able to keep up. And when I say KTM, mainly Brad Binder. We'll talk about the other KTM riders a little bit later. But Brad just seems to have taken everything by the neck and gone, right, let's go. And to start a season with 2 seconds, half a second off in the sprint race from Martin, 1.5 in the main race, and seeing Brad again just with this puffed out, we're there now. It makes for good viewing, and it makes us South Africans very happy and proud.
Well, most certainly it's a realistic goal this year. I even felt last year, I thought top 5 would be a great result for him. He finished 4th. I think he could have got 3rd. Very unlike Brad last year. What did he have? 4 race crashes in the main race. Very unlike Brad Binder. But we know why. They were struggling so badly with the front of their bike and losing feel later on in the race. So we know why. This year, that's one of the things he's so happy that they've improved, is the braking performance into the turns, which is where if you've got more stability there, you can brake a little bit deeper, a little bit harder, maybe carry a little bit more speed. It gives you a big advantage. So that was one of the things he said. He was superbly happy that their bike has improved. Yeah, I think the Ducatis have also moved a little bit ahead. However, one thing that James was telling me while he was there, and he spent a lot of time with Brad, and I'm sure a lot of people know this or maybe don't. Before the season, Brad went to the Red Bull High Performance Test Center. They store all the data over the years. Brad is now at the fittest he's ever been, and he's racing at the same weight as what he raced Moto3 at. So he was in Moto3 5 years ago. He would have been 22, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
22-ish. So he's back to that weight, and they will monitor. There's a very fine line where you become too skinny and now you lose power.
Yes,
they will monitor that point. They'll say, Brad, we know according to your muscle mass and density, whatever they do, at X weight, you're the perfect weight, power to weight ratio. And I think he's at that point. So is most every other MotoGP rider. But for Brad, that's in his head. He's now saying, I'm as good as I've ever been. The bike's as good as it's ever been. It's going to take a brave man to bet against him. The problem is those Ducatis. There was that thing on Instagram that showed the Ducati logo, then the KTM logo, and then just Ducati. That's the reality that he's fighting against. And as we're going to discuss other riders, the biggest advantage Brad's got, Pedro Acosta.
Yeah.
Because now he's going to get race info from an Oak who's, I'm going to say, as good as Brad. It's going to take him 6, 7, 8 races to settle down. But from the go, this chap is going to, so that bike is going to improve even more. So I'm looking so forward to it. And I was so delighted to see how fast he was, because that's exactly what Brad needs.
Yeah, a lot of notes from James Dent, who was there for Motor Rider World this past weekend. A lot of people, Dieter Winkler saying, looked like there was good SA support. And James came back and just said, and we shared it on our Facebook page as well, pictures of so many South African fans in the grandstand. So well done to all the South Africans that got out there and showing their support to every South African that's going to get to a race this year. I know it's not easy coming from South Africa, but it's brilliant that you get out there. And I promise you, Darren said it in the interview we did with him. They see those South African flags. It puts a fire in their belly. So keep it going. Sean and Ronnie, they were also at the race meeting, our UK Liverpoolians, if I can call them, fans. So good to see them there having a good time with Clint Potgieter and all the guys there involved with the Cressini team. That must be such a good environment to be involved now with that Cressini team. I can't wait for that. But Brad, I was worried when the comments came out that he was at his Moto3 weight. I went, no, how can this work? So MotoGP, it's a different animal. You need more muscle and whatever. It doesn't seem to have affected him at all. I mean, he looked like he could do another 200 races on that day. They all do. Every time the commentator spoke about every single rider is their hectic training program. They've lost weight. They're fitter and faster than they've ever been. And it showed in the results. Brad Binder's sprint race over 12 laps was 16 seconds faster than 4 months ago. So not a year ago, not 4 months, 16 seconds faster over 12 laps. Martin, the overall race pace was 11 seconds faster. I mean, that is just it's a different race meet. It's a different level of racing. So Brad, and again, a testament to KTM and the Formula One team in the background with the aero. I know we all hate it and it looks cut, but the reality is that's where you find time. And whatever they're doing right. The only complaint coming out of that race weekend still from Brad is certainly late on that rear grip. And you could see, he said the pumping and that from the rear tire was a lot better than it has been. The bike looked a lot more stable going into and coming out of corners. As you said, Pedro Acosta kind of showcased that as well. And what I like about the Pedro Acosta scenario, apart from the fact that he's a very fast rider, and we will talk about him, is I think he's bringing a different element of data, a different riding style of data to Brad. If you're comparing apples with apples and his data overlays perfectly with Brad's, I wouldn't want that. I want to put that data, and I want, and Brad's that kind of guy, and his team will look at that and go, Jesus, this kid's braking a bit later there. Trail braking a bit more there or earlier there, you know what I mean? So they can meticulously pull that apart. And that's the advantage that Ducati's had over everyone, is they've had 7, sometimes 8 riders with all that different data that they can then take all that different data, piece it together and make this generic motorcycle that just works perfectly in every situation. So Brad, sprint race, fantastic. Main race, road. I mean, I could feel the determination coming through the TV of Brad riding that KTM on that Sunday sprint race, how hard he was pushing to close down Pecco. And he said in his interview afterwards, Pecco just didn't put a foot wrong. And we'll talk more about Pecco just now because I'm literally going through the sprint results. But Brad and KTM are there. This is the nice thing. We're not starting a season off going, they've still got half a second to find and the looks in Brad's are, the checkbooks out from KTM. There's nothing stopping KTM from now challenging Ducati, other than the fact, as we've spoken about, all the Ducatis that are on the grid.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it's stuff we've discussed over and over, but it's coming to fruition now with regards to KTM. But one point I want to make, if you had a look after qualifying, after Q2, they always show the 4 sectors and you see who the top 3 were. And I made a note to look. Out of all 4 sectors, 2 of them on 3 sectors were Ducatis, and 1 sector, all 3 of them were Ducatis. The other 2 sectors, Brad was the fastest. So exactly what you're saying, Rob. Ducati, look at those 4 sectors. They got 2 bikes out of 3, 2 bikes out of 3, 3 out of 3, 3 out of 3 to overlay that data. Brad at the moment is fighting a battle on his own. It's going to improve, we know, and he's looking at Jack's data and the other guys, definitely helping. But I've said it, and I said it last year, build the bike around Brad. If he's the one getting the results, he was second. We won't talk about your mate Jack Miller right now, but Brad was second. Build the bike to suit what he needs, because he's the one who's going to be fighting the whole season for this championship. Yes, they can't be silly like Honda was and only look after one guy. But maybe you need to do that if he's the only guy getting the results. So it's also a decision they need to make. I think 6 or 7 races in, we'll see which way it's going to go regarding Pedro Acosta. But exactly what you say, hopefully his data, and I would imagine he's looking more at Brad's data than the other way around. But he'll be saying, okay, over there, why don't we look at this? And over there, why? And it's going to benefit the team as a collective. And that's what we want to see. So I think it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be way more competitive than I think we actually envisioned this year would be.
Yeah, Greg Reed said, Brad and KTM used to always pin Qatar as a track that never suited the KTM. I remember that one year where Brad finished 11th, like miles away, and you were, oh God, this is really not a KTM track. You're on the side of the tire too long. There's too many corners flowing into each other. It's just the furthest thing from Red Bull Ring you could get. And now, if you look at the progression in 2 years that they've made at one circuit, it's phenomenal. Where's the other comment here? Douglas Twig. How was the speed of those KTMs down the straight? I mean, Brad could slipstream and pass, or put himself in a position to pass Martin on the brakes. And once or twice you saw him kind of tempted. Third time round, and he's got that confidence to now push that front and pass a Martin on the inside. Martin makes it very difficult. If you watch him closely, Martin, he goes out, brakes, and turns to almost close that line, which I could see Brad for a couple of laps kind of just simulating the move, just seeing how quickly Martin does that. And then again, and that's something they haven't been able to have before, is get in the slipstream and not necessarily blow past them, but at least get alongside them. We saw Costa do it with Marquez as well. So KTM have just in every single area, loading the front end, cornering, agility, top speed, managing the acceleration. And I think that's still where they're a little bit off, is managing all that torque with the electronics. On that initial crack on is where Brad seems to just breaks a little bit of traction, which then confuses the whole bike. But it's getting better and better and better. And it was such a relief to see that Brad and the team starting off a season the way they did, because it's you're always going to every season, as well as a fan, as a pundit, feeling optimistic that maybe Brad and KTM could do it. But realistically, you would always go, but I don't have many buts at the moment, other than, again, the too many Ducati story.
Which they're going to have infighting. That's without a doubt. Pecco's not going to win every race. Other Ducatis are going to win, and KTMs. Aprilia maybe once, we'll talk about them. But I think that the collective improvement by KTM is equal to the improvement on the Ducati in terms of percentage-wise. I think something that you missed earlier in mentioning all the improvements for Brad, it looks like their whole shot device suddenly is 0.5% better, because both races, both factory KTMs had fantastic starts. I actually didn't concentrate on watching Pedro Acosta's start, but Jack and Brad were fantastic. And that's such an advantage that, Brad made up 2 places. You think, it's only 2 places. But at that level, cheapers, it's unbelievable. So now when he qualifies on pole, he suddenly might get into the first turn a bike and a half ahead of everyone. And that's such a big advantage. So that's another thing where, for the time being, remember, it was the same last year. But after about 3 races, Ducati had kind of shut that gap. So let's see how it goes. But right now, I think the KTMs definitely have an advantage off the line initially.
Ruan Detlef says, Acosta said in an interview, Brad helped him with a lot. So he said that they share with him, he will share with them. Sounds like a good dynamic. And that's what I'm looking forward to, is that kind of partnership. And we'll talk about Miller and what he's brought and the effects of that's happened there. But I'm really excited, because not only with bike development, but, this weekend, Brad would have looked at, Acosta getting a lot of the headlines. If you cast your mind back last year, Jack Miller came in straight off the bat, was faster than Brad at Portimao, and the kind of the switch flicked for Brad, because he was like, no, I'm the KTM #1 boy. I'm not going to let this happen. So it's going to be a good rivalry in both, developing the bike, but also developing themselves as riders and getting results. It's going to be a really good rivalry that's going to just push them and the brand forward. Lee Williams, another KTM satellite team, a good idea to help the brand improve. Lee, we've spoken about this lots, Paul, and we've always said, yeah, it would be great. They need 2 more KTMs on the grid. Then I thought yesterday, someone actually asked me the question, and I thought about it yesterday, and I was like, now's not the time for them to have another team on the grid, because which riders would you put on it? Paul Espargaro, you would put these kind of guys on. KTM need to be working towards another team, if not next year, the year after, when you got your Alonso, all these kids now coming from Moto3. There's some KTM have got some fiery youngsters coming from that Moto3. If you look at the winner, it's Alonso, yeah.
Alonso, yeah.
Yeah.
Danny Algardo, also KTM.
I mean, that Alonso kid is, I'm telling you now, Acosta's good. All these guys are good. That Alonso really impressed me. So I would say for KTM, the way they're going at the moment, they've got 4 riders, 2 teams they can manage well. You're not stretching your resources, although KTM have endless resources. But, I wouldn't fiddle with this now. They've found a good path. Stick with it, go with it. In a couple of years' time, when you've got these youngsters ready to climb on, go. Because what I think, and we'll talk about it again later, the biggest problem with the Yamahas and the Hondas is just, unfortunately, not having the right riders to be able to put on, not having an attractive enough package to put the right riders on to progress the bikes. And that's down to the fact that it's a very small pool that you can pull from. So, yeah, Lee, I don't kind of really agree with that for now, but let's see. Olimoto says, someone wrote on Crash Post on Facebook the other day that Binder is up there with Pedrosa as one of the best not to win a MotoGP title. What do you guys think of that claim? Well, I think it's still early. I think he can still win a MotoGP title. But yes, the argument for Brad is he's, for me, top 3 best riders on that grid. The stats, unfortunately, don't back that up, because he hasn't won a race in 2 years, and blah, 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 blah. So, yeah, there's a big argument to be had there. But first, Paul, answer the question about the KTM satellite team for me.
Yeah, I think maybe middle of last year, I would have said, yeah, maybe they need another 2 bikes on the grid. It would have been very debatable as to who they put on the bikes. But what you're saying now, Rob, makes so much sense, because regardless of who their 2 slower riders are, as in Augusto Fernandez and Jack Miller, after one race, they seem to be in a happy place. They've got Pole as their second tester stroke backup racer if somebody gets injured. And they've got Danny Pedrosa, who, when they throw him on the grid, blixims everybody except 1 or 2 Ducatis. What more do you need? I think they're in a very happy place. I'm going to use Ducati as an example. They initially had 4 bikes on the grid. When they went to 8 bikes, those 4 bikes were already the best 4 bikes on the grid. So they didn't take a medium bike and put medium guys on it and get good results. They took a great bike, and I'm going to say medium riders, middle of the pack riders, and got great results. And I'll use Alex Marquez as an example. On the Honda, he was nowhere. And that was showing what the bike can do. He jumps on the Ducati, wins 2 sprint races, couple of pole positions, chased for the lead a few times. Shows how good the bike is. So my point is that they didn't give a mediocre bike to mediocre riders. They gave a great bike. And I say mediocre, please understand, no disrespect. I'm talking in that field, where mediocre means you 0.3 of a second off the leader. Now, KTM are in that position right now. Their package and their family seems to be gelling in every aspect. Do you want to now throw in, and let's just say for argument's sake, you throw in a satellite team, you put on a Fermin Aldeguer, regardless of whether he signed for Pramac or not, and somebody else, and now you get 2 riders who are not happy. They upset in the apple cart, and suddenly they become a bit directionless for them. And who do they look after? So I think right now your sentiment is spot on. Leave it for, definitely, we know it's not going to change this year, and don't change it next year, because they're heading in the right direction, and then take it from there. Also see if there's spots available. But I would agree with your sentiment right now, maybe not the right time.
Nicole, Brad, Uncle Rob, will you be traveling to any races this year? So Nicole, I'll definitely be doing Silverstone, but we've got a couple of Motor Rider World insiders going. So Portimao, we've got Paul Pacheco going for us because he's locally based there. We've got Sven Grunner going to a couple for us later this year. And then, like I said, myself out at Silverstone, whether James will be going to one or two more, we don't know. But we try and get Motor Rider World kind of involved in as many of them as we possibly can. It just really is good to get some nice inside information there across to everyone here. Paul, let's move on to Aleix Espargaro, and we'll pretty much sum up Aprilia and their riders as we talk about Aleix. He was third in the sprint race, didn't have the main race that he wanted. I was impressed with Aleix, I must be honest, because I take my hat off to him. He is competitive at the age of 34 in the most competitive motorcycle championship there's ever been. And I really started thinking about that when I was watching him in the qualifying sessions, actually. And I thought, you know what? I always thought he was older. I thought he was like 37 or something. He's 34. Yeah. He's been around forever. But anyway, I sat there thinking, you know what? Age caught up with Rossi and a lot of the riders, and, they just couldn't keep up with the pace. And I sat there going, at 34 years old, this against these youngsters, and where the finish line is just being, taken further and further away from a lot of these riders. Aleix is keeping himself right in the mix there, with the kids there, with all the distractions of life and everything. I was really impressed with Aleix. He came in saying that Aprilia have made a big step, which you believe, judging by the sprint race results. He was talking a big race for Sunday, but then there's something missing from Aprilia. And my worry with Aprilia is Aleix, I think, is a great leader, despite all of his anger issues last year and stuff, which we've documented. I think he's a good leader. I think he's a good test rider. I think he's got all the experience in that, but he shouldn't be the one results-wise being the top Aprilia at the table there. I mean, Maverick Vinales is just not, he's just not being that rider that Aprilia need him to be. Miguel Oliveira, I know we get a lot of Portuguese fans, and you're probably going to hate me saying this, but Miguel Oliveira, he's becoming one of those forgotten names in MotoGP. He's becoming like a Nakagami and a Morbidelli, who we'll talk about later. But, and Raul Fernandez is just a thorn in the side to MotoGP. He just irritates me now, Raul Fernandez. When his bike stalled, it's just like it had to be Raul. It would have to be Raul. So the Aprilia, the whole Aprilia kind of ecosystem is just a question mark for me, because they talk this game, yes, we made these improvements, but then Aleix is saying it's better, Maverick saying it's worse, Miguel saying I can't get to. There's just no kind of continuity compared to the Ducatis and the KTMs.
Going to your very first point about Aleix, where you said he's got his family there and everything, I think he's in a happy space. So everything works around him when everything is going well. He did have a comment after the race that was on one of the press things about how aggressive Pedro Acosta is, and he's going to become another Marc Marquez. Stop moaning. The Oak's fast and he beat you. Stop moaning. Yeah. Okay, he didn't. He went one place behind when his tires were worn. Aleix, he's not my favorite guy. Not because of his temper tantrums. I just find him very arrogant in a field where he's achieved very little. Once again, relative to the people around him. He's certainly keeping Aprilia afloat in terms of the results. Third in the sprint race. But then what happens to him in the main race? He didn't have the greatest start. That was his downfall. But then at one stage, he was almost as good as Jack at working his way steadily backwards. He didn't make up space. I really thought, okay, he's had a bad start, can happen to anyone. But now he'll settle down. And with the pace he showed in qualifying and the sprint race, he should be coming past people. It's not easy, but he should have made up 3 or 4 places, I believe. I don't know. Aprilia are really they're a headache. Raul Fernandez, I know he irritates you. I thought after qualifying, yes, and he almost made it into Q2, but he looked good. Then, Sunday morning, 3rd fastest in warm-up. I thought, hey, this he's finally getting to grips with the bike, which seems to be a sentiment that Simon Crafar shared, until he stalls on the grid. Then exactly what you said, then you're like, he has same problems with the same riders. And he, nowhere. Maverick, well, I don't know. Maverick is just Maverick. He'll have one day where he's absolutely brilliant, and he's going to have 15 days where he's Maverick Vinales. I don't know what to say about them. And Oliveira, as much as we love the Portuguese fans, we love the Portuguese riders, he's letting them down. He's not doing them any favors whatsoever. And with his talent, he certainly should be more consistent. He should be racing with Aleix. What Aleix does, Miguel should be doing. But for whatever reason, and this year they can't put it down to budget constraints because they're now in a team that is very well funded, has the cash. But I also think give Davide Brivio 2 or 3 races to settle everyone into their roles. And I do believe things will improve for Trackhouse Racing. How it's going to impact on the Aprilia factory team, it might filter through, it might not. I've got no idea. They very seldom talk about whether those guys share info. It's definitely a factory team versus a satellite team, and obviously Ralph and Andy's on the older bike. So I don't know what's going on there. They were the disappointment of the weekend. Because we were always expecting Honda and Yamaha to make consistently slow lap times compared to the Dukes and Brads. So I think they were really, I was expecting a heck of a lot more. Aleix rescued them a little bit by finishing 3rd in the sprint, but after that, nothing.
I worry about Ralph Fernandez. He's very much kind of in the same mold as Maverick Vinales. He'll be fast in a test session, in a qualifying, in a practice session. He just doesn't have the mental capacity or the mental strength or belief to kind of convert that into any kind of good results consistently. As far as Aprilia goes, they've got a situation where pretty much all 4 of their riders are on 1-year contracts. So there's all this talk about who's going where. And we know that always, no matter if you admit it or not, it's always going to upset the apple cart. It's always going to have something. For every action, there's a reaction. And having 4 riders there that potentially aren't signed, is Aleix going to hang up his leathers? Is he going to stay? Maverick, what's he going to do? Is he going to throw his toys out and Aprilia's cup? Is Quartararo coming to Aprilia? So it's just not a settled ecosystem, and I think that shows in their results. Again, Aprilia focusing too much on Aleix because he's the fast one. I don't think Maverick is very good at relaying data. I don't think Raul is very good at relaying data. I personally don't think Miguel is very good at relaying data. So you've got this one guy kind of carrying the hopes of Aprilia on his shoulders, wanting the others to kind of put input in, but they kind of just sitting back and going, okay, Captain, what are you going to do? Okay, Captain, our bike's cut. You must fix it until you fix it. You know what I mean? That's the kind of vibe I get from Aprilia, and I worry about them. I worry about them. They're going to have races like Aleix put on in the sprint race where you're going to sit there and go, okay, brilliant. Aprilia's competitive. And then they just, on the Sunday, it all falls away. And anyway, I worry about it.
There's no one to back him up. It's not like you can say, okay, Aleix had a bad day, but Maverick had a great day, or Raul or Miguel. So, it is only day number 1. School's only been in for the first day of the new term, but you can already see what, where the big improvements have been made and kind of where nothing was done. And so, it doesn't bode well for them. And hopefully they prove us wrong, because I love watching bike racing and I love watching close racing with everyone involved. Even though you don't maybe like a Aleix Espargaro or a Marc Marquez, that doesn't matter. We want to see good racing with lots of different people involved, because it can also be a bit boring if we go back to the late 1990s, 89, 90s with Mick Doohan, where he said, I'll win at the slowest speed possible. We don't want someone to dominate. But if they're not on the mark, they're not on the mark. There's nothing you and I can do about it.
Yeah, Francois Coetzee says, Trackhouse will not tolerate poor showing. Deep Sea Diver Smith says Joe Roberts going to Trackhouse. And that's the thing. The whole Trackhouse thing is up in the air. I agree with you. Give Brivio time. I think to stamp his authority there. I think he is probably the best signing Aprilia have made in a long time. I think he'll bring good stability and knowledge and experience into that team. But again, it's this question of, we all pretty much certain that Joe Roberts will be going into that team. But there's so much uncertainty around Aprilia, which is not a good thing going into a season. We had round 1 and there's already all this. So it's going to be a long, tough season for them. There's no doubt about it. Pecco Bagnaia was 4th overall in the sprint race. We kind of touched upon him being more conservative in the sprint, very much the same as last year. And why would you change that tactic? Because last year it worked for him. Conservative in sprint when he's got the pace and he feels it, great, off you go. When he's not, as he did in Qatar on Saturday, still needs a couple more laps, a little bit more race data. The experience of a 2-time world champion now is kind of using that, taking it in. And they still said, he said in his interview on Sunday, after the sprint race, we had to make a big change. We did. it's there for everyone to see. And the guy, that Sunday race from Pecco Bagnaia, when you've got a Brad Binder at the peak of his powers, a Jorge Martin at the peak of his powers, hunting you down and seeing that +2, and as you said, being able to manage the way Pecco did. You know what, supreme. Hats off to Pecco. I know people talk about, you've got a nice big new contract from Ducati and Anthony because he's on a Ducati. I was seriously impressed with Pecco this weekend. I was seriously impressed with Gigi Dell'Igna because let's be honest, that Ducati, I keep using the word ecosystem, that Ducati ecosystem has been pulled apart. KTM have taken their Aprilia, or not Aprilia, Yamaha have taken their, Honda have taken. So it's been pulled apart, that dynamic team of Gigi Dell'Igna. Despite all of that, they're still producing the best bike. And the scary thing for the rest of the field is last year, first couple of races, Pecco and them, no, we're still developing the bike. It's not 100% perfect yet. Geez, they come out the first race meeting and Pecco's saying this bike feels like fantastic. And to win a race like that, I mean, that bike's just going to get better and better and better. So yeah, that whole Ducati project, I put my hands up this weekend, as I did with KTM. They've done a great job, but that Ducati, I don't care what people say about they got too many bikes and this and this and this. Hats off to them. They're getting the job done.
The one point you made there, that the bike, the two riders on the 2024 bike, Bastianini didn't say too much, but certainly Pecco and Martin saying the bike is fantastic. To me, that's a good sign. It means they're not going to get that much better. Where last year, initially, they were not happy with the bike. They were struggling to gel with it. So maybe KTM's advantage is that Ducati have already hit their threshold for so far into the season and maybe not much further, where KTM are still saying, well, hopefully we can find something else. Time's going to tell, but certainly you're quite right. Gigi, he's the calming effect. He's not the David Tardozzi who, nice to see, typical Italian, heart on his sleeve. When they win, he's ecstatic. When they crash, he cries. And Gigi is the same regardless. And I think that's what you need. You need that balance.
Yeah.
But certainly Pecco, to me, and also, Rob, one thing that you didn't mention, which I'd like to highlight, his aggression on lap one. He's not naturally a George Martin, Jorge Martin, or a Marc Marquez, who are quite happy to, or even Brad, knock you out the way if I need to get where I want to go. He's not he's normally more reserved, and he'll pass you when it's lap one. He made sure he got to the front, and then he knew, well, now I'm where I want to be. Now I'll control this race. So yeah, I think to me, he was without a doubt the rider of the weekend, especially if you look at Friday, where he was midfield, didn't stress. Saturday, by his standards, fourth in the sprint race, not a great result. His main rival won. So yeah, I think he's doing exactly as you say, Rob. He's looking at the long game, and the bigger picture is a Sunday versus a Saturday. And he's figured that out. He knows. So Martin can win every sprint. If Pecco wins every Sunday, he'll be world champion. So he's figured that one out very early. And don't forget, when he won Moto2 World Championship, same thing. I think he won only 2 or 3 races that year, but he was second or third in almost every other race. He knows what consistency means. Yes, they want to win, but he'll manage the day where he can only get a third. He'll take the third. So to me, he's already a danger. He's put his stick in the ground and said, well, you want to beat me? I'll be aggressive when I have to be. But once I'm in the front, it's going to take a heck of a lot to get past me. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they change him.
Yeah, there's a calmness and a belief within that team that, as you said, they don't panic. The Friday, the Saturday when, he's not inside the top 10 or certainly challenging the top 5. It's kind of almost a Brad Binder style, because Brad, you can see if P1 doesn't attack it, it's building up for Sunday. And that's, the difference between, they're all fast riders. Every single rider on that grid deserves to be on that grid because they are the fastest riders in the world. I know we pull Raul Fernandez and that apart. The guy can ride a motorcycle faster than anyone else, or certainly we can. The difference is, and this is where the Maverick Vinales, the Raul Fernandez, the Miguel Oliveira, the Jack Miller, who we'll talk about just now, this is where they fail, is here, keeping this all together. And that's where the Pecco the Martin now more so than last year, I would say. The Brad, that's where they've got that half a second. That a Red Bull checkbook or a Ducati checkbook's not going to buy that. You can't
Yeah, correct.
buy that.
Yeah, you can't buy.
That's inbred in you and your DNA. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest difference. And on that subject, talking about riders of the weekend, for me, the next guy who was fifth overall in the sprint, and I think he was fourth
Fourth in the
overall
main.
in the main. Mark Marquez. Now, say what you want to say about Mark Marquez. You're a fan. You're not a fan. He must retire. Blah 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 blah. I've heard it all. I was so impressed with Mark Marquez this weekend. The guy never crashed once the entire weekend. Rain conditions, he was fastest. He looked a lot smoother. There were still those one or two kind of dragging elbows and losing the front moments. Overall, there was a much smoother, calmer, happier. You could see it by his smile on his face, everything. Mark Marquez, who had no right after the amount of time that he spent on a Ducati, 11 years on the same motorcycle with the same team, on a new motorcycle, new team, new environment, new everything, not a factory bike. That's your bike, go, shut up and go. And the way he handled the entire weekend and the results that he got, not even 2 seconds behind in the sprint race and the main race, not far behind either. I sat there going, you know what, this guy deserves all. And I know people go, it's not fair. He gets a lot more airtime than Brad, and I agree with that. The fact remains, Bagnaia, Martin, Marquez, those guys get more airtime because 8-time world champion, 2-time world champion, Martin's just Spanish and he's Martin and whatever. When Brad starts winning more consistently and we'll hopefully, but I'm pretty sure we'll get to see Brad more. But Mark Marquez is a big talking point. And when he puts weekends like that together, beating his brother, you think he was the third best Ducati on that weekend. He was ahead of Bastianini, Alex Marquez, Bezzecchi, all these guys that have been on the DJ Antonio. He's just climbed on that motorcycle. He's just climbed on that bike and in that team. It was so awesome to see Mark smiling. And he said in his press conference, I just want to smile under my helmet again. I just want to enjoy this. And you know what? After everything that he's been through, you've got to take that into consideration. I know it's a while ago now in the show. Everything. I watched those documentaries where he was contemplating retiring and couldn't move his arm. He's just lost his granddad, who was like another father to him. There's so much has happened in all of these guys' lives, but so much has happened for this guy to have the balls to make this move, to jump into that environment, satellite team, no money, less money. I'm here to race and I'm here to win. You know what? I applaud Mark Marquez for this weekend. I really do. And I'm excited to see what he's going to do the rest of the season.
Ditto.
Yeah.
But a couple of things, Rob. Firstly, I do think on Saturday for the sprint race on the grid is the most nervous I think I've seen him in.
Twitchy.
He normally looks a little bit relaxed. You can see they're all starting to concentrate, but he really looked like he was taking deep breaths. He was just focused. I think he was nervous.
Yeah.
Something to highlight, in his Honda career at Qatar, he won there once. 2014, his second year in MotoGP. It's the only time he's won there. It's a track he doesn't like. So exactly what you say. He went about no crashes, 1 or 2 moments, but guaranteed everyone had 1 or 2 moments. He didn't lose it. He didn't have to save it like Pedro Acosta on the shoulder. He just looked like he was feeling his way around. When at the end of the main race, the last 3 or 4 laps, when he closed a little bit on Martin, I think he was then saying, okay, fourth's kind of in the bag. Let's see if we can get third. Let's push this bike a little bit. So I do think that we're going to see quite a lot more from him. As you say, he's been on the bike 9 or 10 days now, having been on the Honda for so long. But we're going to get to tracks, Qatar obviously being one of them, Sachsenring, where he's going to be deadly. That doesn't mean he's going to win, but he's going to get to tracks where he's confident as soon as he gets there. Now he's just raced at a track that he's never been confident at. So, I think a very good showing by him and mature. When Acosta passed him, he didn't panic. He was kind of like, well, I know what he's doing. He's burning up his tires. And which you saw in Brad's interview, Brad said, we had half a second a lap in hand. Acosta doesn't know that. He's going to learn that. He was balls to the wall to get it, and it cost him. But Mark, when he got overtaken by the rookie, didn't panic, just kept running at his pace, and yeah, all credit to him. I think good things are going to happen. And he also, Mark has admitted, age is a factor. And years ago, Colin Edwards said, once you're in your 30s, 0.1 of a second per lap, just because of age. So maybe now with the new bikes and the technology, maybe only from later in your 30s, but certainly Father Time waits for nobody.
Yeah, a little big media car. I like the comment here. Mark, no crashing was a big shock. If he's not careful, he's going to lose his most crashes during the season title. He's won 4 years. Oli Moto questioning whether Marquez's style suits the Ducati, and he's an 8-time world champion, so he should be capable of stepping off on a bike and doing well on another bike with his experience and talent. And I agree with that. I do think he still doesn't look fully comfortable on the bike. He's still kind of doing that Honda, elbows out. So, and this is the thing. This is what the impressive thing for me is that he's still finding his way around this Ducati, and he finished in the third best Ducati. In terms of, he's an 8-time world champion, and he should be able to. I agree with that. I just think everything that happened, he didn't have to. He could have done a Lorenzo and all them and just walked away and said, you know what, I've won my titles, I've got my money, I'm going to go cruise the world and go to spas and swim in nice pools. And what has Mark Marquez got to prove? He could call it in, and you know what, I've done more than anyone else is going to do. There's not going to be another 8-time world champion. All due respect to Pecco Bagnaia and Brad and Pedro and whoever, there's not going to be another 8-time world champion in MotoGP. It's just not going to happen. But after everything that's happened to the guy, I just think he could have easily thrown the towel in, and to go into it's a satellite team with a crew chief he's met him before, but he doesn't know him. He doesn't know anything. It's he's wearing blue. He probably keeps forgetting to put the clothes on because it's like one of his clothes here, and he's anyway. I think we've touched upon the Marquez thing there. I just think he's fantastic, and I'm excited. I think it's another element of excitement to MotoGP. Bastianini and Alex Marquez, I don't think there's much to talk about there. 6th and 7th in the sprint race. Good rides from them, both of them over the weekend. 4th and 5th best Ducati. I think that's pretty much where they're going to feature throughout the year. They're going to have the odd podium ride, and in the case of Bastianini, potentially a win, and Alex maybe a sprint win. But, that's just the riders they are. Are they title contenders? For me, no. Yeah. But they're always going to be there and thereabout. And on weekends like this, just outside that top 5 is kind of where they belong. So we don't have to go too much up on them. In 8th place in the sprint race is a big talking point, Pedro Acosta. Now, we've spoken about him briefly, so we'll just briefly go and then we'll move on. But you can only but be impressed with Pedro Acosta. The way his riding style on that bike, he's transformed himself in such a short space of time to adapt to the bike. He rides the bike a bit differently to Brad, which I like. He's on the brakes, more upright, keeps it upright on the brakes, a bit more hard on the brakes. So there's a lot that's going to, Brad and other KTM riders can pull apart from and use. But what really impressed me with Acosta was he's just not fazed by the show. Just, it was Marquez you're about to jam on the inside. He's just not fazed by the show. And I know comments made by some riders that came out of the weekend, especially James, kind of related to me. Pedro's ride on Sunday, when he was going forward, the other fast riders at the front were conserving tires. So it wasn't necessarily the fast pace that Pedro was setting the lap record pace and catching the guys. He was catching the guys because they were in conserve mode, and he was just on full-blown mode. We saw that he dropped off then because tires, but that's a rookie mistake. He'll learn from that. But saying that, you still got to beat that. And if you look, he beat Jack Miller, thrashed Jack Miller, Maverick Vinales, Bezzecchi. In terms of a rookie performance in modern day MotoGP, the fastest MotoGP that's ever, not the MotoGP Marquez came into or Brad came into. This is the fastest motorcycle racing championship there has ever been. And for him to finish inside that top 10,
and remember a couple of things that people forget, because he seems to have been around forever. He's only done 3 seasons in MotoGP.
He's 19.
He did 1 year in Moto2, Moto3, 2 years in Moto2, and now he's in MotoGP. He's 19 years old.
Yeah,
The
19.
maturity of this kid is unbelievable. I definitely thought at times he's still riding it like a Moto2 bike, very upright, very hard on the brakes. Imagine when his style evolves and he starts riding it like a Brad Binder or a, he's going to be deadly. He's absolutely going to be deadly. Definitely rode like the rookie that he is. Didn't let it phase him, not at all. He didn't look out of place. He adapted like the proverbial duck to water, and off he went. The show didn't hassle him. Being in the big leagues, it's almost as if he's like, okay, well, now I'm here. Now we race. Not a case of MotoGP and nerves. And no, boys, put the helmet on, click engage first gear, launch control, and see you at the end. And I was super impressed by him. I just want to go back one step to Bastianini. I was very disappointed with him. He's on a factory Ducati. He needs to up his game. Is he already thinking end of the year he's going to be without a ride? I don't know. He disappointed me. Alex Marquez, I think exactly what you say. Neither of them are going to fight for the championship. But Pedro, that's definitely, and the fact that he might have taken Jack's ride this year, there was all that talk at the end of last year. Well, let's face it, if he had taken it, certainly wouldn't have done anyone a disservice had he been on a factory KTM running in 6th, 7th, and finishing in, what was he, a 9th or 10th. So, kudos to him. Big things are going to come from that boy. No matter what anyone says, at 19, 3 seasons done, and this is how you treat a MotoGP field and a MotoGP bike. Yeah, it's just going to be so exciting. He's only going to get better. He's certainly not going to get worse.
Yeah, staying on the topic of Acosta and Jack Miller, because it is a topic of discussion. There was already talk last year, and this seems to be the problem that Jack just can't get away from. He's never solidified as, you're a MotoGP rider, don't worry. Even when he signed the 2-year deal last year, it started off so well, and he was doing so well, brought so much development to the KTM, which cannot go overlooked. All that Ducati data with his crew chief, and they helped make that step. Then he just seemed to hit a brick wall. And starting to think about it now, it's kind of when the discussion of KTM, Pedro Acosta already came in. And now, looking at the start of the season that Jack Miller made this weekend, I can't help but think, I think the Acosta alongside Brad Binder next year is already a done deal. I think it's done 100%. And dusted. I think Jack knows that. And unfortunately, we were talking about riders that have a chair that you just can't buy. You can't buy the mental strength. And I think Jack's one of those riders that suffers from it the most. I don't think he fully believes in himself enough. I think he's always looking over his shoulder. And that pressure gets to him. We always see, I like the Jack pumping himself up and hitting the tank and that. But and I know, because I used to do that, it was almost trying to trick yourself into believing in yourself doing that routine. You don't see a Brad, you see a Pecco stroking his tank, and you see a Brad staying calm. You never saw Rossi hitting the tank. You never saw that kind of emotion, because they knew it here. They believed it here. Jack almost is trying to tell himself, hey, come on, wake up. Trying to convince himself to be fast and to be better. And it's to the detriment of him, because he's a fantastic rider and he belongs in MotoGP. And I know you're going to have your 2 cents now. He belongs there. I think he's going to just move to the Gas team for next year. I don't think there's any better option for that Gas team to take on. So I wouldn't let go of Jack Miller completely. I think he's certainly got his advantages and to that team and that project. But I looked at Jack. He's just fragile. Jack is a fragile rider. He's just not as mentally tough as, if you look what Brad went through in his MotoGP, where there were question marks around him, and I want to fly the flag for Jack Miller, because even James Dent said this weekend, what a fantastic guy. But then, seeing him on Monday morning at the hotel, and you can see there's this deflated character. You could see there's this guy that, again, it's the first race of the season, and he's already kind of lost the faith of, have I got a ride? Haven't I got a, you know what I mean? So he needs to just somehow forget this hyping yourself and, believe in yourself, go see a mental coach or do something. But Jack's got to change something if he wants to keep him, or be a MotoGP rider for the foreseeable future. But for me, there's no doubt that he's already lost that ride to Pedro Acosta. I mean, Acosta in every session just about this weekend was ahead of Jack Miller.
And I mean, rightfully so, if Jack has lost the ride. And I agree with your sentiment. From the middle of last year, when KTM had that predicament that they had a contract with Acosta for MotoGP, but they didn't get that additional bike on the grid, they had a problem. And it affected Jack. Now he started off the year thinking, well, I need to get a good result. Today's the day. And then he crashes and Pedro Acosta blows the world apart. In one stage running fourth, coming from 9th or 10th on the grid. Yes, we know he burnt his tires, but that's a rookie mistake. One thing he didn't do was crash. So Jack's definitely under pressure. You're quite right in saying that we're in a very small pool. So chances are that he'll get shuffled, not lose his ride. Because the only one that might lose a ride, if Trackhouse do bring Joe Roberts in, one of their riders, maybe Oliveira moves out, he could move to gas, which will move Jack out of the playing field. The other option, which already is being spoken about, is Jack going to Honda. So will Jean Mir stay there? So maybe an Aprilia ride for Mir. So Jack I think he will have options. But his options are going to be, if Ducati's tier 1, KTM's tier 2, he's going to be tier 25. So unfortunately, I do think he'll stay because of who he is. And everybody, yourself, everyone who meets him says, what a fantastic guy. And he's a team player. You want that. But we're also in a sport where it's results driven. And he's not doing that. So, he's not being paid to be a nice guy. I'm a nice guy. I'll find KTM, they can throw cash at me. He needs to bring the results to the party. And that's not, and yes, it's race 1. So don't let people think we don't understand that. But it's not a good start. Like we said, you can't win the championship on Sunday, but you can certainly go a long way to throwing it away. Now, for people watching that are going to write big checks at the end of this year, straight away they've put a tick next to Pedro Acosta and they put an X next to Jack Miller. Now, you don't want that. 3 strikes and he's going to be done. I do think he'll have a ride. Where it's going to be, it's certainly going to be a Honda or Yamaha. And if he's very lucky, he might get an Aprilia, which I think would be the best of the deals available, presuming that he doesn't just get shuffled to gas. I don't think they're going to keep him, my opinion. I think they're going to look for someone to fill in, because obviously I agree with you. Pedro's going to move to Brad's teammate. Augusto Fernandez, will he keep his ride? Won't he? I think he will, because he'll be more consistent than Jack. He might be consistent in 14th and 15th. So that ride at gas, I think he's going to be available, and maybe a Jean Mir. I don't know. We'll have to see. But certainly Jack's options are going to be very limited if he carries on the way he started the year and the way he finished last year. They take that into account, unfortunately.
The big problem for Jack and Augusto Fernandez, as you said there, is, for these guys who are the best in the business and you are the fastest rider, when you are being beaten every session, week in, week out, by your teammate, and especially in the form of Augusto Fernandez. I've been, I was rookie of the year last year. I was the only rookie, but there was demos of, there was great signs last year from Augusto Fernandez, but, he needs to kick on this year. As you said, MotoGP waits for no man. When you've got your rookie teammate who there's already so much hype around, he's the next Spanish wonder kid, he's 19, and you think about it, he's 19. Rossi raced until he was 39, 40, 41. That means we've got another 20 years of Pedro Acosta in MotoGP, potentially. 20 years. For God's sake, that's a lifetime. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I look at it and I go, you're Augusto Fernandez sitting there. You've just ridden your absolute heart out. You're sitting there and you finished, 14, 15, 30 seconds off the pace or whatever. And you look across and there's media, the team boss, everyone just going around Pedro Acosta, who's just finished 9th, past Marquez on the brakes, and then it hits you as a rider. Same with Jack Miller. Sitting there, can't quite find a solution to the problem you've got. You look over the other side of the garage and there's a rider beaming in confidence, getting it right, getting all the attention, getting all the hugs and the kisses. You're getting the sympathy hugs and kisses. You're not getting, you're getting the, oh, don't worry, we're here. Well, that doesn't really, you can't, how much do you really take from that? Results are riders' best friends. And so, I worry about those two riders. I think Jack is future certain there. Moto was going through, the names. I think for a lot of riders, the Mavericks, the Augustos, the Jack, the lucky fact for them is that there isn't this abundance of riders, quality riders. We talk about Roberts going to Trackhouse, Aprilia. Roberts is not a MotoGP rider for me. No disrespect to him. The big names, Alonso Lopez. Yeah, I like him. Fermin Aldeguer apparently already at Pramac Ducati. Yeah, I like him. Although this week, there's still question marks around him. It wasn't like back in the day where you saw a Zarco or a Marc Marquez or a Pedro Acosta and went, yep, that's MotoGP quality. I wouldn't put my name behind a couple of them. So that's probably the saving grace for a lot of riders in the current field.
Yeah, I think that's all we're going to see. As I say, and you mentioned Joe Roberts, I fully agree. Why would you want to put him on a bike? He's never going to get a better result than Oliveira or Raul Fernandez over a whole season. But yeah, he's American. They want to see an American on the bike. So possibly that could happen. But we're going to see most of the musical chairs. And I think it's going to happen sooner this year rather than later. Because if you leave it too late and you end up like a Bastianini where you have an injury, that's going to do your stock no good. So guys that get offered deals now, especially if it's a deal towards a KTM or a Ducati, they're going to take those deals. I think you'd be silly not to. So it's going to leave the bottom tier bikes, the Hondas, the Yamahas, they're going to be available, presuming once we know what's going on with their riders. Remember, all of them except for Marini are out of Zarco, are out of contract. So we've got 2 Hondas, we've got 2 Yamahas available, and then Miller's ride, Augusto Fernandez. So I think we're just going to see a bit of a let's just swap seats and see what happens. I don't think we're going to see Fermin Aldeguer. Yeah, possibly he'll move. I can't see too many other Moto2 riders moving up, as you say. There is no Pedro Acosta. David Alonso from Moto3, I wouldn't move him up yet. I'd move him to Moto2, seeing how the rest of his season goes. Vaya was a little bit disappointing, but also not that material that you want to move straight up. So, yeah, I don't know. I think you're quite right, Rob. So the 22 that we have at the moment, possibly bar Nakagami, I think are pretty much safe. And I'm going to hop on him purely because last year we didn't even know he was there. This year he hasn't started off much better. And I do think he must be getting to a point where he's, enough now. I've tried my best. I'm consistently out of the points now, not even getting 1 point. Would he want to carry on? I don't know. So it'll be interesting, but I think sooner rather than later, by Mugello, which I think is round 5, I think we'll have seen quite a few deals being put together or big rumors happening. Like with Marquez, initially we heard the rumor and it was, it got stronger and stronger and stronger. So I think that's what's going to happen this year, because if you leave it till the last minute, unless you are winning, and the guys that are winning already have deals, so unless you're winning, I don't think you're going to have too many options available.
I think the other thing we've got to take into consideration, it's also a passport game. It's a game of nationality. Trackhouse wants an American rider. Moto says, bring Kevin Schwantz back, which I think is a good idea. But it's about passports. If you've got the Top Rack is still a name that's being thrown around because, Dorna would love to have a Turkish rider in there. Turkey would love to have it. It's just more money coming in, more viewership, and. So, we got to remember that's not always just on rider capability. It's about passport as well. So, we could have a whole discussion about that entirely. Jake Dixon, another rider that a couple of people have mentioned here, with a smiley face straight after it. So, you know what's going on there. Paul, you spoke about, and a couple of people have already mentioned in the comments as well, Bastianini being one of the disappointments of the weekend. For me, other than the Hondas and the Yamahas, which we'll go on about, Marco Bezzecchi was just in no man's land. We talk about the vibration. We talk about last year how it took a little while for Martin and Bagnaia to adapt to the 23 Spec Ducati. It looks like from this weekend, Bezzecchi's going through those growing pains with that newer spec bike. Remember, he's got the 23 spec bike now, because it was, I forgot about him, to be honest. I had to keep reminding myself this guy was challenging for a championship last year.
Well, my saying to you is always, was he actually there? And I think that's exactly what happened with him. And I don't believe he can use trying to adapt to the 2023 bike as his point of reference or his excuse. 2 reasons why I say that. One, he had the option to go to Pramac and have a 2024 bike. He turned that down.
Mhm.
Second of all the 2023 bikes were ahead of him. His teammate, Gian Antonio, Alex Marquez, Mark Marquez, brand new to the bike. So that's a double-edged sword. He could say, yeah, but Mark knows no better. So that's why he knows that's what the bike can do. I know the bike should be able to do this, and it was doing. So I don't know. He was super disappointing. I mentioned Bastianini because he's on the factory bike. But Bezzecchi, same story, to be that far behind and not feature at all. And, when they don't even show the rider in the pit box, then you know that he's nowhere. And as third in the championship last year, we saw nothing of him. Rightfully so. We want to see more of Brad. He came second. But, normally they show quite a bit of Bezzecchi nationalities, one of the favorite Italians. He was just nowhere and doesn't bode very well for him either, bearing in mind that it was his decision not to take the 2024 bike.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it, and I still think it was a good decision. He's a kind of rider that needs that family kind of vibe and feel. He thrives off that. But yeah, you look at that and you go, I don't want to hear excuses, Marco. You have no excuses. You've put yourself in this situation. You've got to, you made your bed. You got to lie in it now. And the worrying thing for me is there was no real concern. No one was really, he wasn't going in, arms waving, going, I don't know what the hell's going on. There was no real big fuss made about it. It was just, oh, well, we finished there. This is the guy that finished third in the championship last year. He was supposed to push on this year, and like you got beaten by DJ Antonio, who had no ride and was kind of a sympathy. Okay, we'll take him if we have to. That's pretty much what happened there. So yeah, speaking about that VR46 team, the whole team actually went under the radar a bit. And one thing I did notice, even in the grandstands and that, a lot less VR46, that starting to fizzle away. We always kind of knew it would, but there was a lot more South African and Brad Binder fans than you saw VR46. So, that brand will always be established. VR46 will never go away, but certainly it just shows you that MotoGP has now kind of broken out of that mold of relying on Valentino Rossi, and it's there's so many more storylines now. Pecco, Martin, Brad, Marc Marquez, Ducati, the Aprilia, Pedro Acosta. So that Olimoto, I will never stop wearing yellow and 46. I probably won't either, but it was refreshing to see a bit more diversity in the crowd. But I also noticed with the TV coverage, I didn't see a lot focus on the VR46 team, which is strange. But having said that, DJ Antonio, let's not forget, won the race last year. And this is another indication of how the goalposts were moved. I don't think DG went faster than he did last year, but he finished, he had an unfortunate crash in the sprint race. In the main race, he actually did okay. But it just shows you in 4 months how the level has just gone. It's frightening to think. I cannot express to you, when I was seeing those lap times in qualifying and we were talking about the 1 minute 50s or whatever it was, I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I remember World Superbikes going around there and breaking the 2 minute barrier was like fast. It's 10 seconds. Anyway, the VR46 team, I think it's just a case of, okay, they got caught with their pants down. They got caught napping. They weren't ready to go racing this weekend, in my view.
You could definitely see Martin arrived ready to race. Brad Binder, we know he's ready to race. Pecco showed he's ready. As you say, VR46 looked like they had a lack of holiday. They were at the ranch. They were snow skiing. They were really having a good time. They forgot that this goalpost hasn't just moved one field to the right. It's now out of the field, so they might have missed the trick. I think that's what's happened. The Gian Antonio, definitely, I think he's going to be the star of their team. I said it last year, I like him. He just seems to have matured. I think his head is now exactly what you're saying about Jack Miller. I think he's got that belief. And it's going to get better if he keeps beating his teammate. And his teammate was third in the championship. So I think it's going to, I do think they were caught with their pants down. They got there. Whether they took the off season, left everything up to Ducati and said, we'll just sort it out, or not, we'll never know. But certainly they missed the boat on the weekend. And, it puts them on the back foot. Round 1 only of a 22 race championship. But what happens is, because of the mental aspect, a guy like Bezzecchi is now, is he in his mind thinking, yes, look what Martin did on that bike, and I could have had that bike? Or is he confident in his own decision to say, listen, guys, we weren't great. This is how we're going to improve. And Portimao in 2 weeks' time, let's go and knock it on the head there. Well, we'll see in 2 weeks' time. But certainly they on the back foot for the Ducati team with that guy. I think they must be super disappointed.
Yeah, for sure. Ollie Motor, he says he's going to go watch Rossi at Brands and Misano, obviously car racing. Ollie, when is Rossi racing at Brands? Please let me know, because I missed last year, but I must definitely go this year. Brands is 45 minutes from where I stay, so I'd love to go and see if I can get a glimpse of the doctor. I've got a helmet for my collection that I'd love to get him to sign. So just let me know there, please. Moving on then, Paul, Fabio Quartararo and Yamaha. We'll talk about Yamaha in general with Quartararo and Rins. Just, again, nowhere. But at the start of the show, and now we've talked about the goalposts being moved. This is the frustrating situation, particularly more so for Yamaha, because they were a little bit better than Honda were. But so Fabio went faster in both the sprint and the main race than he did last year. So they've improved. Yamaha have improved. There was a clip in the one session, I can't remember which one it was, but Fabio came onto the straight, I think just ahead of Martin. That Ducati couldn't pass that Yamaha in a straight line. So I was like, gee, this is good. But you're finishing 12 seconds off in a 12-lap race. That means you're 1 second a lap slower. Okay, you can talk about I can't pass or whatever, whatever. And in the main race, you were 20-something seconds off. I mean, it is just Fabio. To me, this weekend, he didn't even throw his toys out the car. He had one or two things to say. Fabio said what Fabio's made his intentions clear. He does not want to be at Yamaha. We spoke about it in the testing. Big statements, which are a bit silly. You can't come out and say those things and try and be part of a team and a healthy. It just doesn't work. So to me, you're talking about this mindset, and that Fabio switched off from that project. He's going to ride his hardest and do the best he can, which I think he did on the weekend. That's where Yamaha realistically are, because the goalposts have just been moved again. Every time they think, yes, we gained 10 seconds on our overall race pace from last year. Okay, well, you've got to go 20 seconds.
Yeah.
That's their problem. I think Fabio is already, especially seeing Marc Marquez, and that's the direct indication for him, is right. How's Marc going to perform on a better bike? And he's going to look at that and go, you know what? Why do I risk life and limb on this Yamaha? For what? Fabio to me is not a development rider. I don't think he is particularly one to fix a bike. Alex Rins, I think, is very much the horse in that team. The team relying on him for data and stuff. But Fabio switched his mind. His mind is on next year already.
Yeah, which is I agree fully with what you're saying, but it's going to bite him in the butt. Because if he's switched off, yes, as you say, he's going to race as hard as he can. But at the same time, he's going to bitch and moan. And that's a very small family, that MotoGP paddock. So here he is bitching and moaning, and someone then goes to Rivoli at Aprilia and says, this oak hasn't stopped moaning from when we got here till we went to bed. And then when Quartararo goes to Aprilia to say, listen, Maverick's moving on, or his contract's expiring at the end of the year, why don't you sign me? Then they look at the results and say, well, you're not bringing the results. And the rumors going around that you're actually like a little spoiled brat, and someone's taken your ball, now you're sulking. So it's a very difficult one, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that's what he's doing, but it certainly looks like that. And if that's what it is, it could just bite him that he has no option but to re-sign with Yamaha, which definitely is not number one on his priority. Where would he go? There's no Ducati team that's going to have a space for him, because if you just think it's going to basically be VR46, the Gian Antonio, as far as I'm aware, is only on a 1-year deal, and he's not a VR46 rider. So that could be open. Bezzecchi will always be the favored son there, regardless of what his results are, because he certainly has the potential. So are you going to boot out the Gian Antonio and put Fabio in there? I can't see it happening. What are his other options? He's not going to go to Gresini if Mark and Alex stay there. He's not going to go to Pramac, because there's a big rumor that's already going to Aldeguer, and he's not going to get a factory ride on the Ducati. So his options are limited. He might have an option to go to a Honda and Aprilia, yes, if Maverick moves on. But he must show some intent then. And that, to me, as I said, it's a very small community. Lots of chit-chat goes on behind the scenes. So if that is his attitude, that he's kind of there, I'm not going to say for the paycheck, but to go through the motions. He must be very careful because, he doesn't have the results to show for it. Yes, he's a one-time world champion, but he's got no other results to show for it. So I think he needs to be very careful with how he deals with this year going forward. Yes, he's the best Yamaha rider and probably going to be that the whole year. Rins needs to settle in. I agree with you. They'll use him for all the testing. He's still struggling with that leg that he broke so badly. But I think both of them being 100% fit, I think they're very even in terms of ability. But I do think because Fabio knows the Yamaha, he'll have a better year than Rins. But I think Fabio needs to be very careful of his attitude towards Yamaha as a team for the rest of this year if he wants to find a better ride for next year. And he's going to be limited. He's going to be limited, I think, to an Aprilia.
Yeah, that's all I can see. A couple of people saying KTM potentially. I don't think KTM would want a rider like that. They went through the Raul Fernandez and the Remy Gardner. I don't think Fabio's personality would gel well with Austrians and Germans. I just don't think it would be a good fit in a KTM. I could see a Fabio in an Aprilia. I think he would fit nicely in that environment. So I think that's pretty much where he's going to go. And like you said, pretty much one of his only options. And for Aprilia, we spoke about, or we are going to speak about what Honda in particular are really lacking is, they're lacking that. We've seen it with Toprak in World Superbikes. To be the best, you need to have the best. You need to have the best rider on your motorbike if you want to be the best. And unfortunately, Honda, Yamaha have a case with Fabio and Rins, two extremely fast riders. Honda don't really have a case. Marini, we'll talk about it just now. And that's the problem here. So for Aprilia, Fabio could be their hot ticket. Fabio could be their, right, we've got a good base package that Aleix created and Maverick just complained about and Raul and Miguel couldn't get along with. Maybe it just needs that really fast young rider on it, and Fabio could be the answer to that. So I'm excited for that. But I think Fabio in his mind has already made the shift. Looking at Marquez, I don't think he's got the energy to go through a whole nother season of just developing and going through these pains of the development process. This is something Fabio's never had to do. He climbed on a Yamaha in MotoGP that was working. It worked. That was the Ducati not so long ago. So he hasn't had to go through the struggles that Brad did with KTM. Be patient. There's going to be bad weekends. You've got to just suck it up, be positive, say the right things in the press. He doesn't want to do that. He wants to do a Marquez. I want results now. I'm not waiting. I want now. And that's his biggest problem. Yvonne Pretorius, Robin Paul, can I throw a spanner in the works here? No, Yvonne, you can't. We hate spanners.
No.
Andrea Iannoni, can't spell his surname, and you spelt it horribly wrong. But don't worry, we don't give hidings out for bad spelling. What do you think? Don't you think Aprilia will offer him a ride after 4 years off in World Superbikes like a bomb? So Yvonne, no. I think Andrea's MotoGP days are done. I think he's found a nice home in World Superbikes, and I think that's where he belongs. And I personally think he should stay there because he adds flavor in the World Superbike paddock. If he goes back to MotoGP, he's going to be closer to the back. The level of MotoGP, even the Toprak conversation now, I've always been one with my hand up saying Toprak in MotoGP, Toprak in MotoGP. The level that MotoGP is going to now, I can, start lowering my hand. Alvaro Bautista, yes, he had the injury and whatever as a wild card last year. I mean, the guy got destroyed. Yeah. And that was a guy just dominating World Superbikes. I love World Superbikes, and I will always plead my case for World Superbikes. But it's getting harder to plead that case. So I don't think there's anyone from World Superbikes at the moment that'll be able to make that move across. Even Nico, you must understand, those World Superbike riders, that becomes their comfort zone as well. Less media, less responsibility, less races, less travel, decent paycheck, and you're a star there. Why would I go to MotoGP now? Finish closer to the back of the field, more media, more sponsor obligations, more. I think if you offered it to Iannoni now as well, I think he would say no. I think he would say I'd stay in World Superbikes. So I hope I've answered that question there for you. Paul, moving along quickly because time, I can't believe what happens with time. There's just so much to talk about. We could be here for days. We've kind of spoken about Quartararo and Rins. Yeah, Rins, James did say it's crazy to see how Rins is still battling with an injury. Still got a compression sock on his leg, still hobbles around. So, we think it's been, 8-9 months. You think,
9 months, yeah.
yeah, but he's still really is battling. And I was impressed with him in the main race on Sunday. I'll be honest with Rins, because he was right there with Quartararo, putting in a good stint. And for them, especially Rins, it's all about laps. Staying on the bike, getting laps, getting data. If you're going to be throwing the bike in the weeds, that's not going to help your cause. So I think we all know where Yamaha is. It's very much a case of starting from ground zero and having that patience to build up. They've hired some Ducati minds. Yamaha, you touched upon it in the testing podcast that we did, are spending the money, they're getting the resources, but it's not as simple, just plug and play. It's
Exactly.
going to take time. And Fabio's unfortunately not that patience rider. I think Rins is specifically after that injury and where he is in his career now. I think he looks at it and goes, you know what, this is the reality of, same with Marini's decision. This is the reality of where I am. I'm not going to be a MotoGP world champion. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to be. But what I can be is a development rider and an asset to teams with my patience, with my, my calmness. And that's really the value of a Rins and a Marini, who we'll talk about just now. Oliveira, Ralph Fernandez, we've spoken about. Let's get to Honda. Joan Mir was the cream of the crop in 15th in the sprint race. In the main race, all the Hondas were pretty much together. But Joan Mir was talking a big talk after testing. I also was quite impressed with him at the Sepang test. But this Mir, you talk about riders and opportunities, and there's no doubt he'll be looking for another ride. He's not going to get any other options. I don't think he's hot property at all. And this is a guy that was world champion, 4 years ago?
Yeah. Unfortunately for him, and what I wanted to do, Rob, was compare his race time from last year to this year, but we can't, because guess what? He crashed last year. But I say that in jest. He didn't have a great weekend. Zarco beat him in the main race. Zarco, I think, is going to be the best of the Hondas, which surprises me. I really thought that Mir, from what he had said, exactly what you were saying, he came out after all the testing and said this bike is so much better. But when you look at the results, it's absolutely not. They were consistently in the races at the back of the field. Marini finished second last. So, it's not a great showing for them. And I mean, remember last year, Marini was on pole on the Ducati. So if anyone questions the difference between one bike versus another, he has the same rider, same track, 3.5 months later, and he's 1.7 seconds slower. So, I think it's a very difficult one. Mir, he's going to probably be at Walk and Seymour at the end of the year. He'll be very lucky once again. I don't think he'll want to keep his ride. He'll fall into the Lorenzo, Pol Espargaro category, where as soon as the contract's up, or I know Lorenzo, it was before the contract's up, he's going to walk away. I honestly think that, because I don't think he's there to, like with Quartararo, to develop the bike. Marini, I think he knew. He's in this for 2 years, if not longer. Let's see where we can go. So I've got a little bit more faith in him. But I still think the fastest Honda consistently is going to be Zarco. Zarco is fast. And there are going to be days when he crashes. He should be good in America, because it seems like the Honda works well there. So, the little things they can look forward to. And then if they have improved the bike a little bit, might move them into, consistently around about 10th place, where right now they're consistently fighting for 15, 16, 17. Yes, they did better than that in the race. But I don't think that the bike at the moment is a consistent top 10. And if you read any press articles, they'll say, but that shows how good Mark was, because on the Honda, he was the only consistently when he finished in the top 6 or 7. So Honda are also spending a lot of money, but it's a long-term thing. It's going to take 2 or 3 seasons to get them anywhere near the front of this field.
I always felt bad saying it, but I always said about Marini, and it especially backfired when he put in a good result, like pole positions or challenging for top 5. But I remember saying when he came into MotoGP that I never felt he was MotoGP quality. I never really felt like he was one of the top riders. He never really did that much in Moto2. Yeah, he had the odd little win here and there, but I still believe he very much got to where he is because he was Rossi's little half brother, or whatever you want to call him. But when I look at this weekend, and as you just said, he qualified pole position on the Ducati there last year. This year was a 2.5 or whatever slow on the Honda. it just highlighted that Ducati can make riders look a bit better than what they actually are. Now, I'm not saying where Marini is on the Honda right now is a true reflection of Marini's overall talent, but certainly being on a Ducati amplified that. You could, in many ways, and I get a bad taste in my mouth about to say what I'm about to say. You could, in many ways, say that the same applied for Jack Miller.
Yeah.
You can say the same applied with Zarco. There's a couple of there's a couple of riders you could put to that, but I just don't see Marini as anything other than, and I think, as you said, he got a 2-year offer, he got a good money, come ride our bike. He was going to lose that Ducati ride at some point to a better Foster rider. There was no doubt about it. So, but you got to look at it and say, career-wise, yeah, financially it was a good move, but career-wise, if you did have any kind of thought process of winning the championship and making that move, kind of just emphasizes the fact to me that he was never thinking, I'm going to win a world championship. He didn't go to HRC to win a world championship. He hasn't done that. So it's going to be a long, a very, very, very long, hard season for those Honda riders and Marini. He's going to have to take a lot of punishment. These races where I read his debrief after the race, where he just said, in a nutshell, he said, I don't know what happened. I don't know why we were so far off the pace. God, how can you say that?
Well, that's a worrying point. If he said, well, we know that it was A, B, or C, and now this is how we're going to try and fix it, at least you've got a plan. But it seems like, and this has been going on with Honda for the last 2, possibly even 3 seasons, where they just are directionless. And when they try A, B goes wrong. Then they try C and A goes wrong. And it just seems like, that they're in a bit of a whirlpool, and it just doesn't want to end. And it's not a whirlpool taking them anywhere near the front. So they really are in a bit of a quandary at the moment. And for him to say something like that is not very confidence inspiring. Zarco didn't say too much. I think he gets on what they give him. He gets on the bike. I think being with Cecchinello comes across as somebody who's also very much like, I'm going to say, maybe a Davide Brivio type of guy, where he knows how to control his riders. And and I think they put Nakagami in the pits and they just say, do whatever you want. But with the Zarco, he's going to be able to say to him, listen, this is the package we've got. This is what we expect from you. If you can bring it home top 10, we're delighted. If you 10 to 12, yeah, we're not happy, but make sure you get points. And I think that's how Zarco will move forward. Whether they're doing the same with Marini, I don't know. I just think that they're directionless, and they really were. I was hoping that after all the testing, and they weren't bad in testing, and then this race weekend, we would have seen a little bit of an improvement. But it seems like, if anything, there's been a regress, or they've stayed exactly the same. And like we've said, everyone else has gone a little bit forward. So worrying times for them. It's after one race, they're no better off than they were middle of last year, end of last year.
And the other problem is, as Edwin Norris kind of highlights here, he says Marini too tall, heavy for the class. What's his weight? And the problem is, we're talking about the Brad Binders back at Moto3 weight.
I think he's 62 kilos. Eh?
I mean, and this is what they're doing. The bikes are getting lighter and faster. The riders are getting lighter and faster. And Marini is one of the. I mean, you see him climb on that MotoGP bike. It's like a dinky toy. And I think it is. I honestly do think it's a problem. You think how much money Honda and all these guys are spending on aerodynamics, and you've got this tall guy that no matter how much money you want to throw at him, he can't get behind that screen anymore. He's just too tall. So I think MotoGP's got to that point now. I've always said MotoGP is about those increments, those final little details. It's more so there than ever before. And if you're 1 kilo overweight, it's going to make a huge difference to the bike. If you're 1 centimeter taller, it's going to make a difference to the bike. So I think all these things stack up against Marini. I can just see the realization there of, right, I'm not going to be a MotoGP champion. I'm here to develop. I'm being paid to develop. He's got the patience to give. I'll give him that. He's got the patience. He's, from what I hear and what I've seen in the paddock over the years, he's very meticulous, which is something that Honda might need now. the problem Yamaha and Honda have got, and again, I go back to the Marquez references. If you need results, you need results now. Patience is not one for current MotoGP. There's no time for patience in current MotoGP. Yes, they've got concessions, and it means to me that means nothing when you're so far behind the way they are. They're going to need 3 years of concession before we see anything from Honda.
Yeah.
So do they have, other than Marini and Zark? Okay, like I said, Nakagami. I don't know what's going to happen there, but I don't know. It's just they need it now, and it's not going to come now. And that's just, that pressure is going to boil up and boil up. And the more the media's on top of them, the more their riders on. You know what I mean? There's no escape. There's nowhere to hide now for Yamaha and Honda. Yes, you're hiring these people and you're doing this and you're hiring and firing and there's just always going to be this microscope over them going, you're not performing, you're not performing, you're not performing. There's only so many times. What's that saying? There's only so many times you can beat a dead horse or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And that's the feeling I get with Yamaha and Honda. And it's a pity because, as you said a couple of moments ago, we want to see all these guys challenging at the front. We want to see it. The reality is, for me, this season, certainly they're too far behind. I don't think we're going to see. I mean, Yamaha didn't win a race last year, or Honda not winning a race in MotoGP. I mean, cast your mind 3 years back and you'd be like, oh, shush, man.
Yeah.
Quartararo's just won the World Championship. What you talking? Marquez is just, okay, he's injured, but he just won at Sachsenring in Texas. What you talking? Now I can't see them even coming close to winning a race. I could see Augusto Fernandez winning a race before Honda and Yamaha win a race.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one for them. So I don't know. We discussed it last year ad nauseum, I think is the correct saying. They need results now, which they had with Mark on the Honda. Yes, he crashed a hell of a lot. But why did he crash? Because he was riding a bike that rightfully should have been finishing 15th, and he was racing in the top 5 or 6. So he was 10 people better than his machine. So he crashed a hell of a lot. And people will shoot him down for that. But what's the alternative? He rides like he then made that conscious decision to finish races, and he's finishing 12th, 13th, 14th. That's not him. But Honda right now don't have that rider that will put it all on the line and for 4 laps can race in the top 5. They don't have anyone like that. Zarco's never been like that. He was initially, in fact, when he moved to, remember when he joined MotoGP from Moto2, he was on the Monster Yamaha. Those first, especially that first year, he was very ruthless. But he seems to have lost, maybe it's age, I don't know, or maybe lack of confidence because he hasn't achieved the results he should have. I certainly don't believe they've got a rider that's going to run top 5. Just one thing, remember they did win at Qatar last year with Rins. I'm going to say it was a flip, but they could win again. It's one track where they have a possibility, but I don't believe this year they got the riders. So a difficult one for them, a real difficult one. Them and Yamaha, they're in the same boat. Honda obviously have twice the amount of bikes on the grid. Doesn't seem to be working for them, so I don't think that's a disadvantage to Yamaha, except the fact that Rins is brand new on the bike and he's still finding his feet. So, yeah, it's a difficult one. And as we said, they both bought resources from elsewhere, other companies. It's going to take time. These things, they don't know. They can't say, okay, the fix is A, build new parts, stick it on the bike off. They don't know. Like I said, Marini doesn't know what the problem is. So you can't fix what you don't know. So that's making it even more difficult for them. And I think we're going to discuss this definitely for this year. And no matter how many concessions they've got and their riders can test more, they've got 3 times as many tires. If they don't know what they need to fix, how can they fix it? Yeah. So that's my concern.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. Daniela Kirby from Beam Productions is laughing at me because I look like the guy from Twilight, just a chubbier version with my white skin because I don't see sun here. I take my vitamin D tablets every day, but that doesn't put any color into my skin, unfortunately. A can of worms has been opened, yeah, Paul, in the comments with this rider weight issue. A lot of people saying, yeah, but Patrizzi was overweight and he won a couple of races in MotoGP. The key word there is couple. My simple answer to that is look at World Superbikes with the new rider weight penalty, which I think is completely unfair to Alvaro Bautista, and I'll tell you now why in a second. But look at the difference it's made to Bautista, adding 7 kilograms to a bike. 7 kilograms. What's 7 kilograms? It's actually not a hell of a lot, It's 2 water bottles, and they put it, and it makes a big difference. And MotoGP has got, Rossi was probably the last tall rider that you'll see dominate. I don't. It's jockeys now. Brad's 62 kilos. When last did you weigh 62 kilos? I think I was 10 years old.
Yeah, I think I can make a poo that's more than that.
You know what I mean? That's where MotoGP's got now. And Marini is none of them are. Petrucci is not overweight. I can't stand it when people say, "Oh, he's overweight." The guy is shredded. He's got a six-pack. He's not overweight. He's just a bigger built rider. That's all he is. Marini's not overweight. He's just taller than he's a head taller than Brad. That means weight. That means aerodynamic. That means slipstream. That means everything. But what pisses me off about World Superbikes and the Alvaro Bautista situation, take rugby for an example. Imagine if rugby went with that rules. No, wait, this poor oak is smaller than those oak. They'll tackle him and break his neck off. No. They've got to chop half their legs off.
How
does that, you know what I mean? You dealt the cards you dealt with. Bautista's weight made no difference in MotoGP. He never won a MotoGP race. It made no difference in World Superbikes 2-3 seasons ago when he was on a Honda. Now all of a sudden it's a bone of contention. Petrucci is not overweight. Petrucci is a fantastic rider. I love Petrucci. He's just not one of the elite riders. It happens in life. You get the rider that gets the odd win and that. You get the riders that win all the time. It's got nothing to do with weight. So the Marini kind of argument here is that Marini is not overweight. Does him being one of the taller riders go against him? Absolutely. Absolutely. And any engineer in aerodynamics and will tell you that. The smaller jockey style rider, and that Brad was probably told to lose weight. Listen, if you can lose 3 or 4 kilos, we're in a different avenue here with this motorbike. Especially with Red Bull F1 doing all this aerodynamics and downforce. If your rider is, and Brad always said it to me, I've got to be strict on my diet because they're spending millions on shaving off grams off this bike with carbon fiber chassis and this and this and this. Now I'm just going to eat cheeseburgers and be 5 kilos overweight. That's not fair. And it's making a difference. The small, fast riders are getting faster and smaller.
Absolutely. And that's one thing, unfortunately, for Marini, it's genetics. He can't go and chop off one of his legs. He needs it. So realistically, he is at a disadvantage. I would like to see if it was ever published. I know they won't do it because they don't want anyone else to see. But when he's in a wind tunnel doing the testing versus Zarco, because if you have a look at them, I'm going to guess Marini must be 6 foot-ish, 5'10", 6 foot-ish. Zarco must be 5'5". How do they compare in the wind tunnel? Because that's where it counts. I'd love to see that kind of info. Brad's tiny. They all look normal because they're all small guys. But put them next to, when I say a normal size human being, an average South African male must be close to 6 foot. Average. Brad is not near that. Martini's not near that. Zarco's, they look average size because they all look the same. They're all small. So, it's a very difficult one. Marini does certainly have a problem there. And because we've got to this point where it is a cycling term for it, marginal gains, so where Brad can lose 2 kilos or 3 kilos and it benefits him by X amount. It's difficult for Marini he might be the leanest he's ever been, but because of his physical size, and he's 5 centimeters, 6 centimeters, if not more, taller than Brad, he weighs more. So it's a difficult one for him. And that's just one element that they need to resolve. That's the easiest one to fix because they can say to him, listen, no more McDonald's for you. You're only going to eat X, Y, and Z. That's easy. It's the bike that's their problem, however.
100%. Werner Erasmus, I thought you were not a rugby fan, Rob. Werner, I'm not, Messian. I know at Vietnam niks about rugby, but one thing I do know, and I used rugby as the classic example. Imagine the smallest oak in rugby that's the fastest. I don't know, what's his name, Alton Yankees or one of those oaks. Now the bigger oaks complain, listen, it's not fair that we're big, so we're slower than him. We must put 12 kilos on his shoulders. Exactly. That's what's happening in World Superbike.
That's exactly it.
That's exactly it. Cock, man. You know what I mean? Genetics are genetics. Leave it there.
Did you not notice with David Alonso, because he stalled his bike on his warm-up or his cool-down lap. Then he jumped in the medical car, raced to the Park Ferme. Did you see him run and stand on the scale? Because they have a bike weights. So he had to quickly go get weighed. So I can understand there because there you got 60 horsepower. So horsepower is the limiting factor. MotoGP, it's not horsepower, it's aerodynamics. Because 300 plus horsepower is not a limiting factor. But yeah,
No.
you're quite right, Rob. I don't think that's the way to go.
So to end off, before we get into the Darren and Moto2 conversation, Sean Portman, you don't have to tell me how weight affects racing. It works for my brother. His weight works for him because he wrestles that thing around and he makes it happen. The fastest fat.
So he has to race against Sheridan Moraes down the straight.
Why exactly? I remember in my 600 Supersport days in South Africa, where I was the hot shot on my Triumph. 13-year-old, 14-year-old brace face Brad Binder came with his Suzuki that his dad prepared in Krugersdorp there. Here we go. And I remember walking around the East London track with him. I gave him track knowledge. In that race, he just kept passing me down the straight, and I'd blast him in the corners. I'd break him, and eventually I'd looking him down the straight saying, listen, Lighty, stop whiffing passing me because you're not helping anyone. Yeah, follow me. And he eventually would come next to me and just go like, but uncle, there's nothing I can do.
I can't help it.
You're fat. I'm small. I'm going to pass you. So that's what happened there. Okay, before we get to the Darren, Franky Morbidelli is a big topic of discussion in the comments section as well. Very disappointing. Nowhere, yes, we've got to remember that Franky destroyed himself in that Superbike test at Portimao, has had very limited time testing the Pramac. So I'm going to overlook Franky for now, maybe this and Portimao, but certainly after that, I'm going to start being more critical of Franky. I want to be more critical of him now because I think he's better than that, even with a limited time. I think he should be doing better than that, although he did beat Marini. Shows you where Marini and them are. But yeah, I'm gonna err on the side of caution here, and I'm gonna say, okay, Franky, I understand, but this can't be a dragged out excuse. The Franky Morbidelli's got to improve. If there's a Furman Aldeguer already signed for Pramac, where's he going? Where's Bastianini going? Where's this guy? There's too many riders for that Pramac seat. So if Franky doesn't pull his weight, he's not exactly a hot property, Franky. Talk about names, Nakagami and that you don't really speak of. I spoke to James and I was like, did you even see Morbidelli? And James was like, who? Oh, you're Franky. He's that kind of rider at the moment, unfortunately, Franky Morbidelli. You forget he's there. So he's got to do something. A lot of people said, now watch Franky this year on that Ducati. He's been given a lifeline. The point I'm trying to get to here. He's been given a lifeline because he didn't deserve that Pramac ride. He wasn't supposed to get it. Bezzecchi was supposed to get it. He got a lifeline and he got it. If he doesn't do something with it, he'll be Bulliger's teammate in World Superbikes. Put it that way.
Yeah, I agree. And using the excuse, yes, he had no testing. Unfortunate accident, was ruled out of all the testing. He's a former Moto2 world champion. He's runner-up in MotoGP 4 seasons ago. How can he have gone from that? The very next season, I think he finished 12th. So second to 12th or 13th. Then last year, just a no-show. Yes, also suffered with injuries. I agree with you, Rob. I was happy to say, and I was one of those people when I heard he was going to be on the Pramac bike, I must be quite honest, I thought, well, this just adds another quill to the Ducati bow, that they now have another competitive guy who no doubt has the ability. Yeah, he seems to have shot himself in the foot. So I agree with you. So was the testing such a big issue that he missed all of it? Yes. He hasn't ridden the Ducati. So he's had this weekend, didn't do anything special, not in the wet, not in the dry. Give him Portimao, I'm with you on that. But exactly what you say, and I'm not sure where we go after Portimao, but he needs to up his game properly. By then the excuses are done, because then he's had enough time to figure out where he should be. And, if he finishes 10th at Portimao, I think that's a great result because he's on a Ducati. And then he should start only getting better. But I don't know. I think after that year he finished second, I think we've seen the best of him. And as I say, I was one of those people who was delighted to think he'll be another fast rider on a Ducati fighting for this championship. But what a disappointment, eh?
I go back to the Valencia test at the end of last year. Marquez, 11 years on Honda, everything that Mark's been through, injuries, a little bit could kind of go between Marquez and Morbidelli, everything that's happened with injuries and. Marquez climbs on the Ducati after 4 or 5 laps, sets a pretty decent fast time, and then ends that test, one-day test, but he ends it on an older spec Ducati in whatever, 6th or 7th or wherever Mark did. Morbidelli on a pretty competitive Pramac Ducati bike in the hands of Zarco that did well. I think he finished third last or something in that test. So already there wasn't any kind of spark or any kind of sign that shows you. Mark straight away showed a sign that this is going to work. He came in and he smiled. We all know the famous smile. So there was already signs. To me, there's no sign. Yeah, Olimoto Marquez is a much better rider. We know that. But
Yeah.
I'm exactly what you said. Have we seen the best of Franky Morbidelli? And what concerns me with Morbidelli and Mir, when I see them in the paddock and in their press interviews and everything, I don't see riders that live and die by motorcycle racing. I'm here. I'm here to give my all. This is all I have in life.
Yeah.
I don't see that. A Brad Binder, Pecco, yeah, Augusto Fernandez, a lot of those other riders, even you can see this is all I have. I don't want to do anything else. There's nothing else I want to do. This is all I have. I don't get that same feel. I mean, Jean Mir last year saying, well, maybe I'll just retire or take a year off.
Yeah.
Huh?
Yeah.
Huh? How can you say, and Morbidelli fits that. When you hear his debriefs, when you hear him talk to the media, you don't get any kind of confidence from him that he's going to be able to turn things around. And yeah, I worried. Yes, I know a couple of people saying he's still injured, and I don't know. There's only so many excuses I can say. That's what I said. I'm going to give him the first 2 rounds, maybe 3, and then I'm done. If he doesn't start performing this year, I've got to. As much as I like the guy and he's nice, he's bubbly. Again, nice guys don't pay the checks. Results pay the checks. So we've got to start.
And also, just something to think about. Him, Bezecchi, Marini, they all train at the ranch together. They like a band of brothers. Now, none of them have been performing or have performed well in the test or this weekend. Could it be the fact that over this winter tests or winter break for them, they took a break? Could it be that? How much is Valentino still in, I don't want to say control, that's the wrong word. How much is he still involved with keeping these guys and making sure? Because remember when he was racing, he was actively involved. Yes, besides when they had their races at the ranch, but he was actively involved in bringing these guys together. They all lived together. They did everything together. Now maybe he's a little bit less actively involved. So that commitment, now they're having a lot of fun. I don't know how much fun Brad had over December while he was trying to lose weight. It's just a point, and I'm not saying there's anything to do with that, but funny how those 3 guys who are always together, they're in the same environment all the time. And I know Pecco's part of that, but I think he's transcended those guys. I don't know. Could that have something to do with it? I'm just mentioning it because we know they big Chinas, but it's 3 out of 3 that had shocking results after the winter break testing, whatever you want to call it. Just something, just something to think about. Absolutely nothing to do with that.
Yeah, I go back to there's those people, not just in general life. There's people that just have that killer instinct, and there's some that want it and work hard at trying to get it, but just don't naturally have it. And I think Brad Binder's got the killer instinct. Pecco Bagnaia's got the killer. Martin's got the killer. Acosta, Marquez, those guys. And then there's the Marinis, the Morbidellis, the Mirs that want to have it and work hard to try and get it, but just don't have it. And I think that's what's missing. To be honest, that's where I think it falls short. I like Olimoto. He says to me, Rob, I'm having a party on Saturday. Mir and Morbidelli are coming along. Reckon it's going to be a great night. I really like that. So anyway, listen.
No Nakagami, and I believe he's a party animal.
Yes. Can you imagine? Okay, that pretty much rounds up MotoGP. We'll just quickly dive into Moto2. It was the introduction of Pirelli tires in Moto2. Not a real great introduction. I'm a fan of it coming in. We spoke to Darren, and it'll just Nakagami is going to be the DJ. Olimoto says. Pirelli came in, and it was going to freshen things up. It was a level playing field. Here we go. Sean Portman, Moto3 race on Pirelli's was just under 30 seconds quicker over 16 laps than on the Dunlops. So look, from my racing experience as well, Pirelli's always been a faster tire. Never lost. Even in World Superbikes, you see they fast, but the last 10, 15 laps, it's tire management big time. Those tires are done. Pirelli have always been like that. One thing I have known throughout my entire racing career using Pirelli road tire, race tire, whatever you want, is I made the mistake of using an SC2, which is the medium compound or the harder compound, once, and I'll never do it again because it was the cuckest experience of my life. Pirelli tires are designed to go fast, soft and fast. That's it. They don't know how to build tires that last. They don't. They just do not. Okay, that's Dunlop's field. That's Michelin. Michelin have kind of got a balance between the both. They've been forced to with MotoGP, and again, hats off to Michelin. These riders went faster. Yes, the bikes are getting better, but those tires have got to handle all that. So I know there's a lot of controversy. There's a lot of controversy with Michelin tires and are they breaking lap records? Yes. Are they going faster? Yes. Did we see that many crashes this weekend? Not really. Thumbs up to Michelin. But anyway, back to Pirelli. So Pirelli, again, in the Moto2 race especially proved, okay, and this is where I was upset a little bit with some of the decisions that were made, in particular with our Darren Binder, who had a great start, went with a medium tire, whether it was his choice, the team's choice, I don't know, feeling, over a long distance race and you're used to Dunlops, I can understand why you would maybe go Pirelli harder tire, let's just do the race. No, Pirellis, you go soft all day long, and it was a very bad showing. Okay, my brother's just highlighted how good it was in Moto3 showing. Moto2, it was a very bad showing for Pirelli, more so because the big names, forget, the Darrens and that. Oh, God, Fermin Aldegear. Oh, no, Jesus, Pirelli have ruined his career. Okay, there's still a lot more to come. Moto2 race was 13 seconds slower than the last Qatar race, Sean, on the done. That's because they were managing a soft rear tire. They knew they couldn't ride as fast as they wanted with a soft rear, but they at least had a good feeling and a tire that somewhat worked. The problem that I found with medium Pirellis my whole career was that you just had no feeling. From the start to the finish, you could do 6,000 laps on that tire, and a lot of guys that have done track days and racing in the comment section, I'm sure will have the same sentiments as I'm saying. It just gives you no feeling, nothing whatsoever. It's just cuck from the word go to the end. And that's what came to play. So there's a lot for the teams and riders to learn. I'll be surprised how many riders go out with a medium in Portimao. If I see Darren Binder's team put him on a medium or a harder Pirelli, I'm going to shit myself. Okay, again, I'm going to give Darren and his team a little bit of time. I'll give them this race meeting. It was a cuck performance the whole weekend. Darren dug deep. I know internally there were a couple of things that Darren wasn't happy with, and this and that and that. I'll give it to him, learning curve, but changes have to be made, not only on the Pirelli side, but in Darren's team garage side, because we talk about riders on the chopping block and running out of time. Much as I love Darren Binder, and I will always be the biggest fan of Darren Binder, and I'll support him till I die, that window's closing. And there's riders coming from Moto3. We talk about not many riders coming from Moto2 to MotoGP. From Moto3, there's a big batch of riders. So I want to see that change.
Yeah, I agree with you. Listen, I don't know who made the decision, but if you think about it, Aaron Canet, Tony Arbolina, Darren Binder, all on the medium tire, 5-6 laps into a 16-lap race, and they were done. That to me is not racing. Aldegear, another one. That to me is not it's not a fair call. Who made the decision? I don't know. Had they ridden the medium tire for anything more? In fact, Aaron Canet had only on Friday done race distance practicing. So surely he knew, maybe I don't know pace-wise what it was like. But I mean, he was so good on Saturday, both the free practice and qualifying. He should have run away with this race. Okay, he had a shocking start. Was that the tire or just nerves and him? But once he got going, yes, he worked his way forward a little bit, and all of them, lap 5 or lap 6, they were done. Rob, that's not good, eh? And I hear what you're saying. The guys who stayed on the soft tire, which you would never have expected, especially on an abrasive track like that, they just got faster and faster and faster. So, disappointing. Darren got nicely up to 7th. I think he did well in qualifying. Got into 7th, was looking okay. To me, he looked good. And just suddenly, it was almost like a light switch. Arbolino was exactly the same, and Aaron Canet. Aldegeir never really got near the front, so we didn't see too much of him. But yes, there was such a drop-off. It was a second a lap from lap 6 to lap 10. That's almost unheard of. So I wonder if there was not maybe a bit of an issue, but from what you're saying, it's just the wrong choice of tire immediately.
100%, and that's what irritates me a little bit. And I don't know if that's why I don't know if Darren picked the tire or if the team picked the tire, but from my experience, you just go soft. You just never trust a hard look. I've never ridden these Pirellis. These are obviously specially made for the race. Pirelli in general, that was just the way you went. And as Little Big Media Co says here, there's nothing worse for spectators than watching guys riding to save tires instead of flat out racing. And that's what the Moto2 field gave you. Yes, as you said, the guys on the soft tire were going faster. They weren't going faster in terms of actual race time and lap record time. It's just that the other guys on the medium tire were going that much slower, that it made them look good. And the frustrating part, well, not the frustrating part, but what happened with Canet is he set the race pace on the medium tire. So yeah, he's setting the best race pace because no one else was really thinking about the soft tire. I think some guys just woke up on the Sunday and maybe they had the same kind of thought pattern that I did. Is, you know what? And I always did it with Pirelli as well. And a lot of Clint Seller, Shares, all the top guys did it in South Africa. Stephen Windall, you went to Pekisa, you knew the Pirelli SE1 wasn't going to last. It was cuck. But at least you would have 9, 10 really good laps of decent grip. And then after that, it's playing the management game. Whereas an SE2, the harder, you just had cuck grip from the word go to the end. It just didn't work. Yeah, Alex van der Berg, Rob Portman, seems like the same thing that happened at Pekisa on the K1 SE1. Slick that one race day just didn't work at all. So it's that same kind of feeling, is that these are growing pains that the Moto2 class and the Moto3 class are going to learn about Pirellis. Okay, rounding it off, yes, it was a cuck disappointing race. It was horrible to watch that Moto2 race. I didn't enjoy it at all. Yeah, it was a little bit. I enjoyed watching Barry Baltus, actually.
Oh, I was just going to say.
Rider, elbows out, Barry Sheen, number 7. I quite enjoyed that. The rest of it I didn't enjoy. But I did sit there with my head in my hands going, because Daz hasn't had a great testing season, so, and it's horrible seeing every time we post up the comments now on our Facebook page, normally people are, you know what, Daz, unlucky, next one, support. Now there's these, you know what, I love Daz and I support him, but enough's enough.
Right.
And I hate seeing that, but it's the reality. And there's nowhere to hide. You can't go hide anywhere. And Daz, he's got to find something, whether it's him, whether it's the team, whether it's the bike, whether it's the tires, whatever it is. Daz has got to find something. I know Ollie Moto said, can he go to World Superbikes or World Supersport or BSB? He'll have a lot of fun there. Darren's mentality is not just to go bike racing. Darren wants to be a MotoGP rider and a MotoGP world champion. There's just something missing. And he's got to find it, and I hope he finds it, and I'll support him to the end of the earth to find it. But he's got to find it, because another season in Moto2, he can't have another season like he did last year, because I don't want to even think what could happen.
Well, I think the top 6 from Moto3 are all likely candidates to move up. And remember, at one stage there were 10 of them, then 2 crashed and 2 crashed. So I mean, if you didn't watch Moto3, once again, and I said it the whole of last year, just pick a number out the hat. Say he's your guy for the weekend, and guaranteed he'll either be running first or he'll crash out with 2 laps to go. It was fantastic. Tozawa really impressed me. Had a good end to last year. Came from 18th to finish 2nd or 3rd. But that David Alonso is special, eh? I mean, Danny Holgado led that race. I'm going to say for 15.3 of the 16 laps, he got past with 2 corners to go. Done. That Alonso has got racecraft, speed. He's the real deal. But so is Holgado. But there was, I mean, that race, I mean, I think after 12 laps, 13 of them covered by less than 1 second. Yeah, then a couple of those crashed and made. But I mean, after 13 or 10 or whatever laps it was, that is incredible racing to watch. To me, I don't want to say it's the highlight, but that's the entertainment. MotoGP is the highlight. You're never disappointed. I don't know when last we had an Oak runaway with a 2-second gap. Just doesn't happen. So, fantastic racing to watch. And exactly what you're saying. There must be 6, 8, maybe even 10 of them that are going to move to Moto2, and it's going to just make that so much more difficult for a guy like Darren if he's consistently finishing 14, 15, 16. So let's hope he finds where he needs to be.
Yeah, that Moto3 is like that garlic roll starter at Spur that just is so good every time. And then MotoGP is that lacquer steak mania. Now I want Spur, because I can tell you the food here in the UK is cuck. So now I'm down.
Still good, eh, Rob?
I wish. I'm jealous. Little Big Media Co. On a different subject, saw Daytona results, and Cam or Maddie, where are they? So Cam is still racing Moto America for the Attack Yamaha team. Matthew Skoltz has been out of it. He kind of found out the news over social media at the end of last year that his team was stopping and he had no ride. Pleased to say that he's signed a deal for the Supersport Championship in Moto America, so look out for him there. And yeah, that's about it. Rob, Daz told you what he's missing when he told us on his channel about Brad's mental attitude in the roof while he was done. Yeah, Little Big, I didn't even think about that, actually. In the interview, I don't know if you saw it, Paul, when we were talking with Daz, and he said, did the Roof of Africa with Brad, and then, Daz says he got to a point where he was just exhausted and done, and like Brad, kind of didn't carry him, but his determination, seeing his brother, kind of took him to the line. But I don't know. I don't know what it is. Darren is a very headstrong character. He's had to be with everything that he's had to deal with in that paddock from Moto3 days. He's been through a lot, Darren, and he's got the talent. There's just, is it an Alex and a Marquez kind of situation where Mark's just got a little bit more killer instinct?
Without a doubt, there's something.
Yeah, there's something, and I just hope Daz can find it, because I know it's there. What he needs to find it, I don't know, but he needs to find it, and we'll support him till the end of the earth to help him try and find that. So, Paul, thank you so much for the chat. It's been fantastic. One big thing as rounding out South African fans here, the biggest thing that I took out of this weekend was that look in Brad Binder's eye. That has motivated me like to no end. I've always supported and I will always, but there was never really that belief that he could go win it. There was always the talk, but Rob, can Brad really win it this year? No, yeah, that was the Brad conversation you'd always have. I love him, but now it's yes,
100%.
Yes, he can. And that's what I'm loving about this. Apart from the rest of the narrative that is MotoGP and how much I love about it, as a fan, I'm going, yes, this guy's going to be there week in, week out. He's going to dig deep. He's going to upset those Ducatis. He's going to throw it in there. He's going to dive bomb people. He's going to just do everything he can. He's going to claw like a true South African. He's going to fight till the end. And he's finally got a bit more of the tools to do it. So, yeah, cannot wait.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no doubt that this, people have been saying for a while, oh, this is his year. This is his year. Without a doubt, this is his year. He's just got to keep doing what he does best, and that's ride the bike to the best of his abilities. And, his consistency, last year was a little bit of a hiccup by Brad Binder standards with the I think 4 race crashes. Take that out of the equation for this year. I don't want to say it's a done deal. It's going to be tough, but he's certainly going to be in the mix week in and week out, no doubt. And he's good at the sprint and he's good at the long race. So, I think consistency-wise, he is one up on Martin. The big problem is that number 1 Ducati. But Brad, certainly not going to scare him. That I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, and the qualifying is there now as well. I think that one lap pace has got better as well, and whether the sprint performances of last year has contributed to that, but there's just this more complete package. So it's very, very exciting. Paul, thank you so much to you. Thank you to Ridgeway Race Bar, Rad Pol, Rad KTM, our sponsors, for always supporting us. To every single one that joined the show, liked, comment. Please remember, if you're on YouTube, like. And subscribe to the channel. If you're on Facebook, like it, share the post as far and wide as possible. Unfortunately, there's a weekend break now, but next weekend, Portimao again. And Tuesday after that, we'll catch up with Talking MotoGP Portimao, which I have no doubt is going to be just not, if not even more entertaining than Qatar was.
Yeah, absolutely, Rob. Thanks to everyone who tuned in. Thanks for an awesome chat, Rob. And we'll chat in 2 weeks' time.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great week further. And until next time, stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy yourself. Goodbye.
Yeah. Cheers.